Standing in the lawyer's office, I watched my brother Marcus count zeros on his inheritance check, while my sister Diana squealed about her $5 million. The lawyer handed me a small envelope containing a rusty key. The worthless grandchild gets worthless junk. Marcus laughed, tearing up childhood photos of Grandma and me. I stayed silent, gripping the key that felt warm in my palm. They had no idea what they'd just signed away in those documents they'd rushed through without reading. The morning had started with an unusual October chill sweeping through Portland, matching the cold feeling that had settled in my chest since Grandma Eleanor passed away 6 days ago. I arrived at the law offices of Whitfield and Associates 15 minutes early, parking my 10-year-old Honda Civic between Marcus's brand-new BMW and Diana's pristine white Mercedes. Even in the parking lot, the contrast between us was obvious. Through the glass doors, I could see them already inside champagne glasses in hand. Marcus wore his $3,000 suit, the one he'd bragged about at Grandma's funeral just yesterday. Diana sparkled in diamonds, her perfectly manicured nails catching the light as she gestured animatedly. They were celebrating before the will was even read. "Tasha, finally," Diana called out as I entered, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "We were wondering if you'd gotten lost, though I suppose you're not used to coming to this part of town." I ignored the jab about the financial district being out of my social worker salary range. The appointment isn't for another 15 minutes. Always so precise. Marcus smirked, swirling champagne in his glass. "Just like Grandma, no wonder you two got along so well. Birds of a feather and all that." Mr. Whitfield, a distinguished man in his 70s with silver hair and kind eyes, emerged from his office. "Ah, Miss Harper, now we can begin. Please everyone have a seat." The conference room smelled of leather and old books. Grandma would have loved it. She always said libraries and law offices held the wisdom of generations. I took the chair furthest from my siblings, who positioned themselves directly across from Mr. Whitfield like eager students awaiting grades. "Before we begin," the attorney said, adjusting his glasses, "I want to express my condolences. Eleanor Harper was an extraordinary woman. I had the privilege of handling her affairs for 43 years. Yes, very sad," Marcus interrupted, drumming his fingers on the mahogany table. "But about the estate." Mr. Whitfield's expression tightened slightly, but he maintained his professional demeanor. "Of course, Mrs. Harper's estate is substantial, and her wishes were very specific." He opened a thick leather folder and began reading. "To my grandson, Marcus Harper, I leave the sum of $5 million to be transferred immediately upon my death." Marcus pumped his fist in the air. "I knew it, I told you, Diana. All those years of visiting her paid off." I bit my tongue. Marcus had visited Grandma exactly twice in the last year, both times to ask for money. "To my granddaughter, Diana Harper Sullivan." Mr. Whitfield continued, "I leave the sum of $5 million to be transferred immediately upon my death." Diana shrieked with delight, already pulling out her phone. "Oh my God, I have to tell Bradley we can finally buy that house in the Hamptons." Additionally, the attorney said, raising his voice slightly over their celebration, "Marcus and Diana will share ownership of the Harper family mansion on Beacon Hill, along with all furnishings and artwork contained within." My siblings were now standing, embracing each other completely, ignoring the fact that Mr. Whitfield was still speaking. "Excuse me," the attorney said firmly. "Please be seated, there's more." They reluctantly sat down, still grinning like lottery winners. "To my granddaughter, Tasha Harper." He read, and their heads swiveled toward me with predatory interest. "I leave this." He pulled out a small manila envelope and slid it across the table to me. I opened it carefully. Inside was a single rusty key, old-fashioned and heavy, attached to a simple leather cord. There was also a folded piece of paper. Marcus burst out laughing. "A key! She left you a key!" His laughter grew louder, more cruel. "Oh, this is perfect! The worthless grandchild gets worthless junk!" "What does it even open?" Diana giggled. "A rusty old lockbox with mothballs." I unfolded the paper and read Grandma's shaky handwriting. For my dear Tasha, who sees value where others see rust. Some treasures aren't meant for those who count worth in dollars alone. That's it, Marcus asked Mr. Whitfield. She gets a tetanus hazard and a fortune cookie message. That is the extent of the specific bequests, yes, Mr. Whitfield replied carefully. Now there are some documents I need you all to sign, standard estate paperwork. He produced 3 thick stacks of papers. My siblings grabbed pens, eagerly flipping to signature pages without reading anything. Shouldn't we review these first? I asked, earning scoffs from both siblings. Always so paranoid, Tasha, Diana said, signing with flourishes. It's just legal formalities, transfer papers and such. Exactly, Marcus added, scrawling his signature on page after page. Mr. Whitfield has handled Grandma's affairs for decades. I'm sure everything is in order. As they signed, Marcus pulled out his phone and showed Diana photos. Look, I already put a deposit on the Lamborghini, picking it up tomorrow. That's nothing, Diana countered. I've already called my decorator. We're gutting Grandma's mansion. All that old furniture has to go. My heart clenched. Grandma's antique furniture, each piece with a story, would be thrown away like garbage. Especially that hideous craft room, Marcus added. Can you believe she wasted an entire wing on painting those stupid lighthouses? I'm turning it into a home theater. I watched Mr. Whitfield's face as my siblings carelessly signed document after document. His expression remained neutral, but something flickered in his eyes when they mentioned destroying Grandma's craft room. Oh, and Tasha. Marcus said suddenly, remembering I existed. He pulled out his phone and showed me the screen. It was filled with photos from my childhood. Me and Grandma baking cookies, painting together, reading on the porch swing. I'm clearing out the digital clutter from the family cloud storage. Don't need these anymore. With theatrical cruelty, he selected all the photos and hit delete. There, more space for important things. Diana laughed, pulling out a wooden box from her designer bag. Speaking of cleaning house, look what I took from the mansion yesterday. She opened it to reveal Grandma's collection of handwritten recipes, some dating back generations. I'm thinking of using these as kindling for our first fireplace party. Vintage paper burns so prettily. I gripped the rusty key tighter, feeling its worn edges bite into my palm. They had no idea what they were throwing away, no concept of true value. All finished, Marcus announced, pushing his signed stack back to Mr. Whitfield. When do we get the money? The transfers will be completed by end of business today. The attorney replied, collecting the papers. You'll receive confirmation emails shortly. Excellent. Diana stood already heading for the door. Come on, Marcus, let's go celebrate properly. That champagne bar downtown just opened. Marcus followed but paused at the door to look back at me. Hey, Tasha, if that key opens a treasure chest full of Grandma's unused coupons, feel free to keep them all. His laughter echoed down the hallway as they left. I remained seated, turning the key over in my hands. Mr. Whitfield began organizing his papers, then paused. Ms. Harper, he said quietly, your grandmother was a remarkable woman. She spoke of you often. Thank you, I replied, surprised by the emotion in his voice. She used to say, he continued, that the greatest treasures are often hidden in plain sight, visible only to those who look with their hearts rather than their wallets. Before I could respond, he excused himself, leaving me alone in the conference room. I held the key up to the light. Despite its rusty appearance, I could make out intricate engravings on the handle, tiny lighthouse designs that seemed to dance in the afternoon sun. My phone buzzed. Jake, my husband, texting to ask how things went. I typed back, got exactly what Grandma wanted me to have. As I left the building, I passed my siblings' cars. They'd left the parking tickets under their windshield wipers, unpaid, probably figuring parking fines were beneath millionaires now. I carefully tucked the key into my purse, right next to the photo of Grandma and me that I'd taken from her bedside table the night she passed. Unlike my siblings, I knew some things were worth more than money could ever measure. The October wind whipped around me as I walked to my car, but the key in my purse seemed to radiate warmth. Grandma always said the best stories had secrets hidden between the lines. As I drove away from the financial district, I couldn't help but wonder what story this rusty key was waiting to tell. The drive home took me past Grandma's favorite bakery where we used to stop every Sunday after church. My mind drifted to all those family gatherings where the seeds of today's scene had been planted years ago. The memories came flooding back, each one a piece of the puzzle explaining how we'd gotten to this point. It started at Thanksgiving 5 years ago. Grandma had spent 3 days preparing her famous feast, turkey brined in her secret blend of herbs sweet potato casserole, with the marshmallow pattern she'd perfected over decades and her legendary pumpkin pie that had won the county fair 12 years running. The dining room glowed with candlelight, her best china gleaming on the hand-embroidered tablecloth. Marcus arrived 2 hours late in his new suit cell phone pressed to his ear. "Close the Singapore deal." He barked into the phone, not even greeting Grandma as he walked past her. "I don't care what time it is there." Diana swept in behind him, designer heels clicking on Grandma's hardwood floors. "Mother's exhausted from the charity gala circuit," she announced to no one in particular, as if we'd asked about her mother-in-law. You can't imagine the stress of organizing events for people who actually matter in this city. I was in the kitchen helping Grandma transfer the turkey to her great-grandmother's serving platter. Her hands shook slightly. The arthritis was getting worse, but her eyes remained sharp. "Thank you for coming, sweetheart," she said to me quietly. "I know your shift at the shelter ran late." "I wouldn't miss your Thanksgiving for anything," I assured her, steadying the platter. When we brought the food to the dining room, Marcus was scrolling through his phone, while Diana examined her manicure. Neither offered to help. "So Tasha," Marcus said, without looking up, "still wasting your master's degree at that nonprofit. You know I could get you a real job. My company needs someone to manage the coffee supplies." Diana tittered. "Oh, Marcus, be nice. Someone has to help the less fortunate. It's good that Tasha found her calling." She said the last word like it tasted sour. "Actually," I said, serving Grandma first while my siblings waited impatiently, "we just received funding to expand our youth program. We'll be able to help twice as many at-risk teenagers next year." "How philanthropic," Diana yawned, "though I can't imagine why you'd want to spend your days in such depressing circumstances. Bradley says people in those situations are usually there by choice." Grandma's grip tightened on her fork, but she remained silent. The pattern repeated at Christmas. While Marcus and Diana competed over who gave the most expensive gifts, a gold watch here, designer luggage there, I gave Grandma a photo album I'd compiled of all her lighthouse paintings, with stories I'd written about each one. She held it to her chest, tears streaming down her face. "What a unique gift," Diana said, her voice dripping condescension. "Homemade, how crafty." "It's perfect," Grandma whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "These stories. You remembered every detail I told you." "Of course she remembers your little painting stories," Marcus interjected, pouring himself generous amounts of Grandma's special eggnog. "She spent enough summers here instead of building a real career network. No wonder she's still driving that ancient Honda." But those summers were everything to me. While Marcus interned at investment firms and Diana attended debutante preparations, I chose to stay with Grandma. Every morning, we'd wake before sunrise and drive to a different lighthouse along the coast. She'd set up her easel while I prepared our thermos of tea, Earl Grey with a touch of honey, just how she liked it. "You see how the light changes," she'd say, brush moving confidently across the canvas. "Every moment is different. That's why I never paint the same lighthouse the same way twice." I'd sit beside her, learning not just about painting, but about life. She told me about growing up during the Depression, how her family lost everything, but rebuilt through hard work and ingenuity. She spoke of my grandfather who died before I was born, and how they'd built their life together with love and determination, not inherited wealth. "People think being rich means having money," she'd say, adding touches of gold to capture the sunrise. "But real wealth is knowing who you are and what truly matters." One particular summer day stood out. We were at Portland Headlight, her favorite spot. As she painted, she told me about a decision she'd made long ago. I could have lived differently, she said, her eyes distant. There were opportunities to take shortcuts to value money over integrity, but every choice we make paints the picture of who we become. That evening back at her house, she showed me a room I'd never seen before. Behind a bookshelf in her study was a hidden door. Inside, filing cabinets lined the walls filled with documents, photographs, and correspondence. Someday, she said mysteriously, someone will need to know the whole story. I'm trusting you to understand when that time comes. I thought she meant her paintings, her family history. I had no idea of the magnitude of what she was really saying. The last Christmas we all spent together was the worst. Marcus arrived talking about his company's hostile takeover of a smaller firm. Crushed them, he boasted. That's how you build an empire. No room for sentiment in business. Diana spent the entire dinner planning renovations for when she'd eventually inherit the mansion. This whole aesthetic is so outdated, she declared, gesturing at Grandma's carefully curated antiques. I'm thinking minimalist modern, clean lines, none of this cluttered vintage nonsense. These pieces have been in our family for generations, Grandma said quietly. Exactly my point, Diana replied, missing the hurt in Grandma's voice entirely. Time for an update. After dinner, while my siblings compared investment portfolios in the parlor, I found Grandma in her craft room staring at her lighthouse paintings. They don't see it, she murmured. See what Grandma... She turned to me, her eyes incredibly sad but somehow also determined. The real treasure. They look at my paintings and see hobby work. They look at my home and see outdated furniture. They look at my life and see missed opportunities to accumulate more wealth. She walked to her easel where her latest work sat, a lighthouse standing firm against a storm. But you see differently, don't you? I see love, I answered honestly. I see history. I see stories worth preserving. She hugged me, then tighter than usual. Never lose that vision, Tasha. Promise me. I promise. The funeral 3 days ago had been the culmination of all these dynamics. Marcus and Diana arrived late, having stopped at their lawyers to discuss the estate. During the service, I heard Diana whisper to her husband about paint colors for the mansion's renovation. Marcus spent half the eulogy checking stock prices on his phone. I delivered the eulogy sharing stories of Grandma's kindness, her wisdom, her quiet strength. I spoke of her volunteer work at the literacy center, how she'd taught hundreds of adults to read over the years. I mentioned her anonymous donations to the food bank, the scholarships she'd funded for local students, the way she'd opened her home to anyone who needed a warm meal and a listening ear. She sounds like a saint, someone whispered. Why haven't we heard about any of this before? Because Grandma believed true charity was done without fanfare, without seeking recognition, unlike my siblings who made sure everyone knew about every donation they made for the tax write-offs. After the service at the reception in Grandma's home, Marcus and Diana were already dividing up possessions. I'll take the silver service, Diana announced, photographing items with her phone. It'll look divine in my dining room. The grandfather clock's mine, Marcus declared, worth a fortune to collectors. They moved through the house like vultures, claiming and cataloging, while I sat in Grandma's kitchen serving her famous chocolate chip cookies to grieving neighbors who shared stories of her kindness. Mrs. Patterson from next door clasped my hands. She talked about you constantly, dear. Always said you were the only one who really saw her. Mr. Chen from the literacy center had tears in his eyes. She never missed a Tuesday session in 20 years. Even when her arthritis was bad, she'd come help someone learn to read. That's the Eleanor I'll remember. Now, pulling into my driveway, I realized the weight of what had happened at the law office. My siblings had inherited money and property, but they'd also signed away something far more valuable, though they'd never know it unless they learned to see beyond dollar signs. Jake met me at the door, his concerned face brightening when he saw I wasn't upset. How did it go? What did she leave you? I pulled out the rusty key and his expression shifted to confusion. That's it. That's everything, I said, meaning it. Jake, remember when Grandma used to say that the best treasures are the ones that require effort to find? He nodded slowly. She also said patience was the companion of wisdom. Exactly. I held the key up to the light, noticing something I'd missed before. The rust wasn't uniform. In certain spots, it had been carefully applied like paint. I think Grandma left me a puzzle. That evening, while Marcus posted photos of his new Lamborghini on social media and Diana shared champagne selfies, I sat at my kitchen table with the key and Grandma's note. Under the lamplight, I noticed the paper had an unusual thickness. Remembering Grandma's love of mystery novels and hidden messages, I held it near the steam from my tea kettle. Slowly, like developing film words, appeared in the steam. The lighthouse holds our real treasure. You're the only one who ever listened to where it was. My heart raced. All those mornings painting lighthouses, all those stories she'd told. They weren't just grandmother's ramblings, they were clues. I thought about calling my siblings, then remembered Marcus deleting our childhood photos and Diana planning to burn Grandma's recipes. They'd made their choice about what they valued. Grandma had made hers about who deserved her real legacy. As I prepared for bed, I looked at the key one more time. It wasn't just rusty. It was crafted to look rusty. Grandma, who attended to every detail in her paintings, who chose every word carefully, had deliberately made this key appear worthless. Clever woman, Jake murmured, understanding dawning in his eyes. She knew exactly who would throw it away and who would treasure it. Tomorrow I'd start following the trail she'd left, but tonight I held the key close and whispered a thank you to the wisest woman I'd ever known. She'd known our hearts better than we knew them ourselves, and she'd planned accordingly. The real inheritance had begun. The morning sun streamed through the windows of Grandma's cottage in Wells Beach, casting dancing shadows across the dusty floorboards. I'd driven here alone, leaving Jake to handle his Saturday shift at the fire station. This cottage, 23 miles from Portland, had been Grandma's retreat, her sanctuary where she painted and thought and dreamed. My siblings had refused to pay for its maintenance after Grandma fell ill, calling it a money pit and a worthless shack. Standing on the weathered porch, I remembered the last time I'd been here with Grandma 2 years ago. She'd been moving slower then, but her eyes had sparkled as she unlocked the door with the same ceremony she'd used when I was 7 years old visiting for the first time. "This place holds more of me than that big house ever will," she'd said. Now I understood why. The cottage smelled of oil paint and lavender, Grandma's signature scent. Everything remained exactly as she'd left it. Canvases stacked against walls, brushes standing at attention in mason jars, her favorite cardigan still draped over the rocking chair by the window. My siblings had been too busy calculating the mansion's worth to bother with what they called Grandma's glorified storage unit. I made my way to her craft room, really a converted sun porch that faced the ocean. The morning light here was extraordinary, explaining why Grandma had chosen this spot for her art. Lighthouse paintings covered every wall. Dozens of them, maybe close to 100 in various sizes and styles. Some were realistic, others impressionistic, but all captured something ethereal about their subjects. At first glance, they seemed like the collection of an enthusiastic hobbyist. But as I studied them more closely, my social worker's eye for detail, the same skill that helped me spot signs of abuse or neglect others missed, began noticing patterns. Each painting contained numbers worked into the landscape. In one, the rocks at the lighthouse base formed clear digits 379. In another, the window panes created the number 8, while birds in formation spelled out 2 and 4. The numbers were subtle, integrated so naturally that unless you were looking for them, they'd appear to be simple, artistic choices. I pulled out my phone and began photographing each painting, careful to capture the hidden numbers. As I worked, I found myself talking aloud to Grandma, a habit I'd developed during our painting sessions. "You clever woman," I murmured. "How long did it take you to plan all this?" A loose floorboard creaked under my weight. I knelt down, remembering how Grandma used to hide surprises for me throughout the cottage when I was young. quarters for the ice cream truck notes with encouraging words, small treasures that made each visit magical. The board lifted easily, revealing a metal box wrapped in oilcloth. Inside, I found a leather journal filled with Grandma's neat handwriting. The first page read, "For the one who seeks truth in beauty and beauty in truth." The journal documented each lighthouse painting, when it was created, which lighthouse it depicted, and most importantly, the GPS coordinates of each location. But there was more. Beside each entry were notes about maintenance visits, with specific dates going back 40 years. Checked on the foundation, one entry read, "All secure for future generations." Inspected the eastern installation, read another, "Weather damage minimal, repairs completed." My phone buzzed, Jake texting, "How's the treasure hunt going?" "I think I just found the map," I typed back. A car engine outside made me freeze. Through the salt-stained window, I saw Diana's white Mercedes pulling up, followed by Marcus's BMW. My stomach dropped. How had they found me here? I quickly returned the journal to its hiding spot and was examining a painting when they burst through the door without knocking. "I knew it," Diana exclaimed, slightly out of breath. "I told you she'd come here." Marcus pushed past her, his eyes scanning the room greedily. "Looking for more rusty keys, Tasha." "Just remembering Grandma," I said calmly. "This was her favorite place." "Right," Diana scoffed, pulling out her phone. "And I'm sure it has nothing to do with that piece of junk she left you. Bradley thinks you're hiding something. He says no one leaves just a key unless it opens something valuable." "Bradley thinks the moon landing was faked," I replied. I wouldn't put too much stock in his theories. Marcus had moved to the paintings, examining them with the calculating eye of someone who'd watched too many treasure hunting shows. These could be worth something. Diana, look up lighthouse paintings on that auction site. While Diana searched, Marcus turned to me. "Here's the deal, sister. We know Grandma had more money than what was in the will. No one lives in that mansion for 60 years without accumulating serious wealth. You were always her favorite. She must have told you something." "She told me lots of things," I said truthfully. "Like how disappointed she was when you tried to get her declared incompetent last year." His face flushed. "That was a misunderstanding. We were concerned about her mental state." "You were concerned about her bank statements," I corrected. "Mr. Rodriguez from the bank told her about your inquiries." Diana looked up from her phone. "These paintings are worthless. Amateur work, maybe $50 each at a garage sale." "Then why are you here?" I asked. They exchanged glances. Marcus pulled out a document. "We had our lawyer draw this up. It's a family asset sharing agreement. Basically, if that key leads to anything valuable, we split it 3 ways, fair and square." I almost laughed. "You mean you want me to sign away rights to something you claim doesn't exist?" "Just being thorough," Diana said with fake sweetness. "Families should share, don't you think? After all, we shared our inheritance news with you at the lawyer's office." "You mocked me at the lawyer's office," I reminded them. "Marcus deleted our childhood photos. Diana threatened to burn Grandma's recipes." "Water under the bridge." Marcus waved dismissively. "Sign the paper, Tasha, unless you're planning to be selfish with whatever Grandma really left you." I stood moving toward the door. "I need to think about it." "What's to think about?" Diana blocked my path. "Unless you already know what that key opens and you're planning to keep it all for yourself, that would be just like you pretending to be so noble while secretly scheming." "You're projecting," I said quietly. "Not everyone thinks like you do." Marcus stepped closer, trying to intimidate me with his height. "We could make things difficult for you, Tasha. Legal challenges to Grandma's mental state when she made the will, questions about undue influence. You spent all that time with her. Alone." "You mean the time when you were both too busy to visit?" I met his stare steadily. "The time I spent holding her hand through chemo treatments while you were in Cabo, the nights I stayed with her when she was scared while you were at gallery openings." Something shifted in Diana's expression, maybe shame quickly suppressed. "That's not fair. We had obligations." "You had choices," I corrected. "And you made them. So did Grandma." I pushed past them and walked to my car. They followed Marcus, still waving the document. "This isn't over," he called. "We'll be watching you, Tasha. Every move you make. That key belongs to the family, not just you." "Funny how I'm family when you want something," I shot back, starting my engine. As I drove away, I saw them in my rearview mirror, standing in front of the cottage that held so many precious memories. They'd never understood the value of that place, just as they'd never understood Grandma's true worth. My phone mounted on the dashboard showed a text from an unknown number. "Miss Harper, I noticed some unusual activity around your grandmother's accounts before her passing. Might be worth discussing. Thomas Chen, private investigator." I pulled over to read it again. Someone else was investigating Grandma's estate, but who hired him? Another text came through this time from Jake. "Your siblings just called here looking for you. Told them you were at a yoga retreat in Bar Harbor. That should buy you some time." I smiled despite everything. Jake understood the importance of what I was doing, even if he didn't fully grasp what I was looking for. He trusted me just as Grandma had. Back home that evening, I spread out all my photos of the paintings on our dining room table. Jake brought me tea, Earl Grey with honey Grandma's blend, and sat beside me as I organized them by date according to the journal entries. "Look at this," I said, pointing to the pattern emerging. "The numbers aren't random. They're combinations, but not just one. Each painting has a piece." "Like a massive puzzle," Jake mused. "How many lighthouses are there?" I counted. 17 paintings, 17 different lighthouses, all along the Maine coast. "And you think each location has something hidden?" I showed him the journal entries about maintenance and inspections. She was checking on something at each site. For 40 years, Jake. Whatever this is, she spent half her life protecting it. He whistled low. "Your grandma was full of surprises." "The question is," I said, studying the rusty key, "which lighthouse do I start with?" Jake picked up one of the photos, a painting of Portland Headlight, Grandma's favorite. "When in doubt, start at the beginning. Isn't that what she always said?" He was right. Portland Headlight was where she'd painted her first lighthouse, where she'd taken me for my first painting lesson, where some of her happiest memories lived. "Tomorrow," I decided. "I'll go tomorrow at dawn just like we used to." That night, I dreamed of Grandma. She was young again, standing at her easel, painting furiously as the sun rose over the ocean. "The light reveals everything," she said in my dream, "but only for those who rise early enough to see it." I woke with tears on my cheeks and determination in my heart. My siblings could hire all the investigators they wanted. They could follow me, threaten me, try to intimidate me. But they'd never understand what Grandma had taught me. The most valuable treasures weren't the ones you could deposit in a bank. They were the ones that required patience, love, and the ability to see beauty where others saw only rust. Tomorrow the real search would begin. 3 weeks had passed since the will reading, and my siblings' harassment had escalated from annoying to cruel. They'd apparently decided that if they couldn't intimidate me into sharing whatever the key might unlock, they'd humiliate me into submission. Today's family gathering at Aunt Patricia's house for her 70th birthday would be their latest stage. I arrived with Jake carrying a homemade photo album I'd created for Aunt Patricia, filled with pictures from family gatherings over the years. Diana stood at the entrance greeting guests while wearing a necklace that I recognized as one of Grandma's pieces, something that should have been in the mansion. "Tasha," she exclaimed loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Still driving that old Honda, I suppose some things never change. Though I heard you've been taking lots of mysterious trips lately. Gas must be expensive on a social worker's salary." "Hello, Diana," I replied evenly. "The necklace looks beautiful. I remember when Grandma wore it to your wedding." Her hand flew to her throat. "Yes, well, someone should enjoy her nice things. No point in leaving them to gather dust or rust." She smirked at her own wordplay. Inside the party was in full swing. Aunt Patricia hugged me warmly, genuinely delighted with the photo album. "Oh, Tasha, this is wonderful. Look, there's Eleanor and me at the county fair 30 years ago. She always said you had the best eye for capturing memories." Marcus appeared at my elbow, champagne flute in hand. "Speaking of memories, everyone's dying to hear about your inheritance, Tasha. Why don't you show them?" The room quieted, various relatives turning to look. I could see the setup immediately. Marcus had been spreading gossip, ensuring maximum audience for whatever humiliation he'd planned. "I'm sure everyone would rather hear about Aunt Patricia today," I deflected. "Nonsense." Cousin Robert chimed in, clearly primed by Marcus. "We all want to know what Eleanor left her favorite grandchild." With theatrical timing, Marcus pulled something from his jacket pocket, a fake treasure map complete with burnt edges and an X marking the spot. Since Tasha's being modest, I made a visual aid. See, while Diana and I received our inheritance in boring old money, Tasha got something special, a rusty key. Laughter rippled through the room. Not everyone. Aunt Patricia looked uncomfortable, and a few cousins seemed confused rather than amused, but enough to make my cheeks burn. "But wait." Diana joined in, pulling out a wrapped gift box. We felt bad that Tasha's inheritance was so modest, so we got her something to help with her treasure hunt. She handed me the box with exaggerated ceremony. Inside was a cheap metal detector, the kind sold at toy stores for children. More laughter, louder this time. "Maybe you can find some quarters at the beach," someone suggested. "Or lost car keys in parking lots," another voice added. Jake's hand found mine squeezing gently. I could feel his anger on my behalf, but I kept my expression calm. Grandma had taught me that dignity in the face of mockery was its own form of power. "How thoughtful," I said, examining the toy metal detector. Though I should mention that Grandma's key is iron, not metal. It wouldn't register on a detector. But then understanding the difference between various metals requires actually paying attention to details, doesn't it? Marcus's smile faltered slightly. "Always the know-it-all. Some things never change." "Speaking of things that never change," I continued. "Remember when Grandma tried to teach us all about metalwork, you two left after 5 minutes because it was boring. But she and I spent the whole afternoon learning about different alloys and their properties. She said understanding materials was essential for preservation." "Fascinating," Diana drawled. "Is that what you think about during your mysterious lighthouse visits?" "Oh yes, we know all about those. Early morning drives to stare at old buildings. Very productive use of time." Cousin Sarah, who'd always been kind, tried to change the subject. "I think it's sweet that Eleanor left something personal to Tasha. Not everything has to be about money." "Exactly," Marcus pounced on the opening, "which is why we're not worried at all that we might have missed out on some secret fortune. Though it is curious how Tasha's been sneaking around to Grandma's properties, acting very suspicious for someone who just inherited a worthless key." "I visit places that remind me of Grandma," I said simply. "Some of us process grief differently than immediately selling off her belongings." That landed. Several relatives who'd been laughing looked uncomfortable remembering their own losses. Uncle James Patricia's husband spoke up. "Eleanor was a private woman. If she left Tasha a key, I'm sure she had her reasons." "Oh, I'm sure she did," Diana said with false brightness. "Probably opens a box of those paint-by-number kits she loved so much, or maybe her collection of lighthouse postcards. Tasha always did encourage her little hobbies." Hobbies. Aunt Patricia's voice was sharp. Eleanor was a magnificent artist. Her paintings captured something ethereal about the Maine coast. I have 3 of them in my study. "Amateur work," Marcus dismissed. "We had them appraised. Worthless." "Value isn't always monetary," Patricia responded coolly. "But then Eleanor always said some people know the price of everything and the value of nothing." An uncomfortable silence fell. Jake chose that moment to speak his firefighter's calm authority, cutting through the tension. "Actually, I've been researching lighthouse history since Tasha inherited the key. Did you know that lighthouse keepers often hid important documents and valuables in secret compartments? The isolation and responsibility of their position made them natural guardians of secrets." "How fascinating," Marcus said with exaggerated interest. "Is that what you two talk about over dinner? Lighthouse keeper conspiracies? Among other things, Jake replied easily. Tasha's also been teaching me about the symbolism in Eleanor's paintings. There's a remarkable consistency to her work that suggests deeper meaning. Oh, please, Diana rolled her eyes. Next you'll be telling us she was some sort of secret artist savant leaving coded messages in her amateur paintings. Before I could respond, Marcus's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his expression shifted to something uglier. Well, my investigator just sent an interesting update. Seems our dear sister has been asking questions at the county records office, looking into property deeds, planning to contest the will Tasha. I was researching lighthouse history, I said truthfully, for a memorial project I'm planning for Grandma. A memorial project, Diana repeated skeptically. How convenient. And I suppose this project requires you to visit 17 different lighthouses. The specific number made me freeze. They'd been following me more closely than I'd realized. You know what I think? Marcus announced to the room. I think Grandma's mind was going at the end. I think she made promises to Tasha that she couldn't keep, and now poor Tasha is chasing fantasies because she can't accept that her special relationship with Grandma didn't translate to a special inheritance. That's enough, Aunt Patricia said firmly. Eleanor's mind was sharp until the end. I spoke with her the week before she passed, and she was perfectly lucid. Of course you'd say that, Diana muttered. Everyone wants to protect Tasha's feelings. The party continued awkwardly after that. Some relatives clearly sided with my siblings, whispering about fairness and family wealth. Others seemed disturbed by the cruelty on display. I focused on Aunt Patricia helping her open gifts and cut cake, refusing to let my siblings' behavior ruin her special day. As we prepared to leave, Marcus cornered me by the coat closet. This isn't over, Tasha. We know you're hiding something. That investigator I hired, he's very good at finding things people want to keep secret. The only secret I'm keeping, I said quietly, is how ashamed Grandma would be of your behavior today. His face darkened. Grandma's dead. Her approval doesn't matter anymore. And that, I said, meeting his eyes, is exactly why she left you money instead of anything that mattered to her. On the drive home, Jake was quiet for several miles before speaking. They're escalating because they're scared. They know they missed something important. The investigator worries me, I admitted. If they start digging into Grandma's past, then they'll find whatever she wanted found. Jake finished. Your Grandma was too smart to leave anything to chance. Trust her plan. That night, I sat in our small living room surrounded by my photos of Grandma's paintings. The toy metal detector sat on the coffee table, a reminder of my siblings' mockery. But as I studied it, something occurred to me. Marcus had been wrong about one thing. The key wasn't iron. The rust was applied, not natural. Underneath it was something else entirely. I picked up my phone and searched for Thomas Chen, the private investigator who'd texted me. His website was professional, his credentials impressive. But buried in his client testimonials was something interesting. He specialized in financial crimes and hidden assets, but he also had a reputation for ethical practices. He'd exposed several inheritance scams where vulnerable elderly people were manipulated by greedy relatives. On impulse, I called his number. Ms. Harper? He answered on the second ring. I wondered when you'd call. Who hired you to investigate my grandmother's estate? Your siblings initially, he admitted, but I'm no longer working for them. What I found raised questions about their motivations. I think we should meet. Why should I trust you? Because, he said carefully, I knew your grandmother, not well, but we crossed paths professionally 20 years ago. She helped expose a charity fraud that was stealing from elderly victims. Eleanor Harper was a remarkable woman, and I believe she'd want someone to know the full truth about her legacy. I agreed to meet him the next day, my mind racing. Whatever Grandma had hidden it was bigger than I'd imagined, big enough to attract professional investigators, big enough to drive my siblings to public cruelty. Looking at the rusty key in my hand, I made a decision. Tomorrow, after meeting with Chen, I'd visit Portland Head Light at dawn. It was time to stop reacting to my siblings' games and start following Grandma's trail in earnest. The mockery at the party had backfired in one crucial way. It had shown me that Marcus and Diana were desperate. They'd inherited $5 million each plus a mansion, yet they couldn't shake the feeling they'd missed the real prize. They were right to worry. The sunrise at Portland Headlight painted the sky in shades of rose and gold exactly as it had. Countless mornings when Grandma and I had sat here together. I'd met Thomas Chen an hour earlier at a 24-hour diner in South Portland. The private investigator was a soft-spoken man in his 50s with observant eyes and careful manners. Over black coffee, he'd shared what his investigation had uncovered. "Your siblings hired me to find hidden assets," he'd explained, sliding a folder across the table. "They were convinced Eleanor had millions more than what appeared in the will. What I found instead was a pattern of property acquisitions, spanning 40 years, all under various trusts and shell companies. Your grandmother was very sophisticated in her financial planning. The documents showed 17 coastal properties, each purchased near a lighthouse. But what caught my attention was the timing. Every purchase coincided with a painting in her collection. There's more," Chen had continued. "Your grandmother wasn't just buying real estate. She was preserving something. Each property has structures or installations that require regular maintenance. She personally oversaw all of it." "What kind of installations?" "That's what I couldn't determine from the records. But I can tell you this. Your siblings signed away their rights to any undisclosed assets when they signed those papers at the lawyer's office. They were so eager to get their money, they didn't read the fine print. Now, standing where Grandma had painted her first lighthouse 53 years ago, I understood why she'd been so careful. Whatever she'd built, whatever she'd protected, it had been a lifetime's work." Old Thomas, the groundskeeper, was already at his post despite the early hour. He'd been tending these grounds for 30 years, his weathered face as much a part of the landscape as the rocks and sea spray. "Ms. Tasha," he greeted me warmly, "been expecting you." "You have?" He smiled, revealing a gold tooth. "Eleanor said you'd come at sunrise. Said you were the only one who understood that the best light comes to those who rise early to meet it." "You knew my grandmother well." "Well enough. She came here every August 15th for 40 years. Always checked on her responsibility, she called it. Always alone except when she brought you." My heart raced. Her responsibility. Thomas glanced around, ensuring we were alone. "Follow me." He led me not to the lighthouse itself, but to a maintenance shed built into the hillside. Inside, behind a false panel I would never have noticed, was a heavy door with a modern lock. The rusty key slid in perfectly. The door opened to reveal a climate-controlled room. Motion sensor lights flickered on, illuminating something that made me gasp. The walls were lined with fireproof safes, each labeled with dates and lighthouse names. In the center sat an antique desk with a leather-bound ledger. "She said you'd know what to do," Thomas said quietly. "Said you were the only one who'd understand why it mattered." With shaking hands, I opened the ledger. Grandma's neat handwriting filled the pages, documenting something extraordinary. This wasn't just wealth. It was a complete parallel business empire she'd built in secret. Hartley Industries, the billion-dollar tech company everyone knew about, was just the public face. Behind it was a network of innovations, patents, and investments that dwarfed even that success. But more than financial records, the ledger told a story. Grandma had started with nothing after her parents were bankrupted by her siblings' greed and manipulation. She'd vowed to build something they couldn't destroy, something protected from those who valued money over family. Every lighthouse has a room like this. I breathed, understanding dawning. She built 17 secure vaults along the coast. 40 years of work, Thomas confirmed. She said lighthouses were perfect. They stand through storms, guide people home, and everyone sees them, but nobody really looks at them. A car engine outside made us both freeze. Through the small window, I saw Marcus's BMW pulling up, followed by Diana's Mercedes. They must have been watching my house, following me here. "Is there another exit?" I asked urgently. Thomas nodded, pressing a hidden button. A panel slid open, revealing stairs carved into the rock. Leads to the beach. Eleanor planned for everything. I grabbed the ledger and a stack of documents from the nearest safe, stuffing them into my backpack. Thank you, Thomas. Please don't let them... They'll get nothing from me, he assured me firmly. Been keeping Eleanor's secrets for 30 years. Not stopping now. I descended the carved stairs, emerging onto a small private beach, just as I heard my siblings' voices above demanding Thomas tell them where I was. The morning joggers and dog walkers provided cover as I made my way back to my car parked a half-mile away at a public lot. My phone buzzed repeatedly, messages from both siblings increasingly frantic and angry. I ignored them, driving instead to the one place I knew they wouldn't follow, the homeless shelter where I worked. In my small office, surrounded by the chaos of morning meal service, I spread out the documents I'd grabbed. Each page revealed more of Grandma's incredible story. She hadn't just built wealth, she'd built an entire system designed to protect and grow that wealth while serving a greater purpose. The patents were for innovations in elder care technology, devices to help people age with dignity. The investments focused on companies that aligned with her values. The real estate holdings included not just the lighthouse properties, but affordable housing developments, senior centers, and community spaces. My colleague Janet knocked on my door. Tasha, there are 2 people here demanding to see you. They're making quite a scene. Through my office window, I could see Marcus and Diana in the shelter's entrance, their designer clothes utterly out of place among our clients waiting for breakfast. Marcus was red-faced, gesticulating wildly as he argued with our security guard. Tell them I'm in a counseling session and can't be disturbed, I said. If they continue to disrupt services, call the police. Janet grinned. With pleasure. They already upset Mrs. Rodriguez by calling this place depressing. As she left, I returned to the ledger. A section near the back caught my eye. Succession plan. Grandma had thought of everything. The lighthouse vaults weren't just storage. They were a test. Only someone who understood their significance, who would take the time to visit each one and learn its story, could access the full inheritance. But there was a catch. The assets were held in a trust with specific conditions. They couldn't be liquidated for personal gain. They had to be used to continue Grandma's work. Innovation for social good support for the vulnerable preservation of community spaces. The trustee would receive a generous salary but couldn't treat the fortune as personal wealth. It was brilliant. Grandma had ensured her legacy would continue serving others, managed by someone who understood service over selfishness. The $5 million each that Marcus and Diana received, that was their true inheritance. Enough to live comfortably, but not enough to satisfy their greed. The real fortune required real responsibility. My phone rang. Jake. Your siblings just left here, he said. They tried to search the house while I was in the shower. Mrs. Murphy next door called the cops. They're now banned from the property. Are you okay? I'm fine. But Tasha, they're unraveling. Diana was screaming about lawyers and rights. Marcus threatened to ruin your career. What did you find? Everything, I said softly. Jake Grandma didn't just leave me a key. She left me a mission. That afternoon, I met with Mr. Whitfield at his office. He smiled when I showed him the ledger. I wondered when you'd find the first vault, he said. Eleanor made me promise not to reveal anything unless you discovered it yourself. She said the search was as important as the discovery. You knew all along. I've been managing the legal framework for 20 years. Your grandmother was my most fascinating client. She built all this while maintaining the appearance of a comfortable but unremarkable widow. Even I don't know the full extent of what she created. What happens now? Now, he said, pulling out a thick folder. We begin the transfer process, but first you need to visit all 17 sites. Each vault contains pieces of the puzzle. Only when you have the complete picture can you take on the trustee role. And my siblings... His expression hardened. They received exactly what Eleanor intended. The documents they signed are ironclad. They have no claim to anything beyond their initial inheritance. That evening back at home, I sat with Jake as we processed everything. The little cottage we'd been saving to buy suddenly seemed unnecessary, but I understood that personal wealth wasn't the point. Grandma had lived modestly while building an empire for others. That was the example to follow. 17 lighthouses, Jake mused. How long will it take to visit them all? Grandma spent 40 years building this. I can spend a few months understanding it. He pulled me close. Your siblings are going to lose their minds when they find out. They'll find out only what they need to know, I decided. The details of Grandma's work, the specifics of the trust, that's not for them. They made their choice about what mattered to them. As if summoned by my thoughts, my phone lit up with a message from Diana. We know you found something at the lighthouse. Our investigators saw you leave with documents. You can't hide this from us. Family shares everything. I thought about responding, then deleted the message. Grandma had taught me that actions spoke louder than words. My siblings would see the results of her legacy, the continued charitable work, the innovations that helped people, the preservation of community spaces, but they'd never control it. The search had begun, and with each lighthouse I'd visit, I'd understand more of the remarkable woman who'd raised me to see value where others saw rust. The key had opened more than a door. It had opened a future dedicated to continuing the work of someone who understood that true wealth meant making the world better for others. Tomorrow I'd visit the second lighthouse. 15 more secrets waited to be discovered. And somewhere in Grandma's carefully constructed puzzle was the fullness of her vision, a vision she'd trusted only to me. The rusty key sat on our kitchen table, catching the last rays of sunset. Not rusty at all, I realize now, but crafted to appear so, just like Grandma herself. Extraordinary treasure disguised as something ordinary, waiting for the right eyes to see the truth. The restraining order arrived on a Tuesday morning 3 weeks into my lighthouse visits. Jake handed me the manila envelope with a worried expression as I sipped coffee at our kitchen table. Inside, Marcus had filed claims that I was mentally unstable, citing my obsessive behavior and delusional treasure hunting as evidence that I needed psychiatric evaluation. He's actually trying to have me declared incompetent, I said, scanning the legal documents, just like he tried with Grandma. Jake's jaw tightened. Can he do that? He can try, but I have a better lawyer than he thinks. Mr. Whitfield was way ahead of my siblings. When I called him, he chuckled. Eleanor predicted this exact move. Check your email. I've already filed our response, including Marcus's previous attempt to have your grandmother declared incompetent and the judge's scathing rejection of that petition. While Jake headed to work, I drove to the fourth lighthouse on Grandma's list, Pemaquid Point. I'd been systematically visiting each location, uncovering more pieces of her incredible puzzle. Each vault revealed not just financial documents, but personal letters, photographs, and evidence of a life lived with purpose. I was photographing documents in the Pemaquid vault when my phone rang. Diana. Tasha, sweetie. Her voice dripped with false warmth. Can we talk, just sisters? We're talking now. I mean in person. I realize we've been horrible to you. The stress of losing Grandma the money, it brought out the worst in us. But we're family. We should be supporting each other. I almost laughed at the complete reversal from her recent behavior. What do you really want, Diana? Her facade cracked slightly. I know you found something. Everyone knows. You've been seen at multiple lighthouses with documents. People talk Tasha. The groundskeepers, the locals, they all remember Grandma visiting those same places. So maybe we can work together. Marcus is being an idiot with this legal nonsense, but I'm not like him. I actually cared about Grandma. Remember when I was little, how I used to help her in the garden? I did remember. Diana had helped for exactly one afternoon before complaining that dirt was ruining her manicure. You picked 3 tomatoes and then went inside to watch TV. Well, I was young, but I've grown. I understand now what Grandma was trying to teach us about hard work and values. That's why I think she'd want us to share whatever legacy she left. Not legally, of course. You inherited the key fair and square. But as sisters, we could— Diana, stop. I interrupted her performance. You're not good at this. Manipulation requires subtlety, and you have none. Her sweet tone vanished instantly. Fine. You want honesty, Bradley's threatening divorce if I don't get more money. He married me thinking I'd inherit at least $20 million. $5 million isn't enough for the lifestyle he expects. I need whatever you found. That sounds like a Bradley problem, not a Tasha problem. You self-righteous. She caught herself. I'm trying to save my marriage here. By stealing from Grandma's legacy, she'd be so proud. It's not stealing if it's family money. We're all her grandchildren. We all deserve equal shares. We all got what Grandma thought we deserved, I corrected. And if Bradley only married you for money, maybe losing him wouldn't be the tragedy you think it is. She hung up on me, but not before I heard her sob. Despite everything, I felt a twinge of sympathy. Diana had built her entire identity around wealth and status. Without it, who was she? That evening, I returned home to find my house had been searched. Nothing destructive. They were too smart for that after the police warning. But small things were displaced. Books shifted on shelves, drawers not quite closed properly. My laptop moved slightly on my desk. They made a copy of our house key, Jake said grimly, examining the lock. I'm calling a locksmith. While he handled that, I checked my laptop. As expected, someone had tried to access it. But they didn't know about my security software, which had not only blocked access, but captured photos of the intruder through the webcam. Marcus's face stared back at me from the screen, frozen in concentration, as he'd tried to hack into my files. Got you, I whispered. The next morning brought new drama. I arrived at work to find Diana in my office, tears streaming down her perfectly made-up face as she talked to my supervisor, Dr. Martinez. And I'm just so worried about her mental health, Diana was saying. Our grandmother's death hit her so hard, and now she's having these delusions about treasure and secret fortunes. As her sister, I feel responsible. Diana. Dr. Martinez's voice was cool. I've known Tasha for 8 years. She's one of our most stable and dedicated employees. If you have concerns, I suggest you discuss them with her directly. Diana saw me in the doorway and immediately ramped up the performance. Tasha, I've been so worried. Marcus showed me the psychiatric evaluation request. We don't want you to lose your job over this breakdown you're having. The only breakdown happening here is yours, I replied calmly. Dr. Martinez, I apologize for my sister bringing personal drama to my workplace. It won't happen again. See, Diana appealed to Dr. Martinez. She's paranoid, thinking everyone's against her. This isn't the sister I grew up with. Dr. Martinez stood. Ms. Harper Sullivan, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. This is a place of business, and you're disrupting our services to vulnerable populations. Diana's face flushed. You don't understand. She's sick. She needs help. The only sick person I see is someone trying to manipulate the mental health system for personal gain, Dr. Martinez replied. Security can escort you out if needed. Diana grabbed her designer purse, glaring at me. This isn't over. We're going to prove you're unstable, and then a responsible family member will need to manage your affairs, including whatever you inherited. After she left, Dr. Martinez turned to me. Want to tell me what's really going on? I gave her the abbreviated version. She shook her head in disgust. Your grandmother was a wise woman. She knew exactly who deserved her trust. That afternoon brought the most disturbing development yet. Thomas Chen called with urgent news. Your siblings have hired someone else, he warned. Someone with a less ethical approach than mine. I recognized him at the courthouse, Vincent Cross. He specializes in digging up dirt, creating it if necessary. Creating it? Doctored photos, false witnesses, planted evidence. He's been investigated but never prosecuted. Be very careful, Ms. Harper. Document everything. Never go anywhere alone if you can help it. I thanked him and immediately called Jake. We agreed to install security cameras at the house and that I'd vary my routines, making it harder to track my movements. But my siblings weren't done. That evening, Marcus appeared at a community board meeting where I was presenting our shelter's quarterly report. He waited until the public comment period to stand. "I'm concerned about city funds going to organizations run by mentally unstable individuals," he announced. "My sister Tasha Harper has been exhibiting signs of severe delusion since our grandmother's death. She believes she's on some sort of treasure hunt. Should someone in that condition be managing vulnerable populations?" Board member Mrs. Washington, who'd known Grandma, fixed Marcus with a steely gaze. "Young man, I've served on this board for 15 years. Tasha Harper has an impeccable record. What's your real purpose here?" "I'm worried about my sister and the people she serves," Marcus insisted. "She's been neglecting her work to chase fantasies." "That's a lie," Janet, my colleague, spoke up from the audience. "Tasha hasn't missed a single day. She's been using her personal time and weekends for family business." Other staff members and even some clients spoke up, defending my work ethic and mental health. Marcus found himself outnumbered and outmaneuvered, his accusations falling flat against the reality of my professional reputation. He stormed out, but not before loudly declaring, "When the truth comes out about what she's hiding, you'll all see I was right." The next day, while Jake and I were at the grocery store, a woman approached me in the cereal aisle. She looked nervous, constantly glancing around. "You're Tasha Harper?" she asked quietly. I nodded warily. "I'm Lauren, Marcus's wife." She looked exhausted, stress etched in every line of her face. "I need to warn you. Marcus is planning something. He's been meeting with that investigator Cross, and they're talking about manufacturing evidence. Something about planting items at lighthouse locations to make you look like you're involved in illegal activities." "Why are you telling me this?" Her eyes filled with tears. "Because I'm done. I'm filing for divorce. I've been recording Marcus for weeks. His rants, his plans, his admission that he tried to have your grandmother committed for money. I thought I married a successful businessman. Instead, I got a greedy, cruel man who'd destroy his own family for money he doesn't even need." She handed me a flash drive. "Some of the recordings are on here. Use them if you need to. And be careful. Marcus is desperate enough to do something really stupid." She hurried away before I could thank her. Jake and I abandoned our shopping and went straight home to review the recordings. Lauren hadn't exaggerated. Marcus's own words painted a picture of escalating desperation and increasingly illegal plans. "We take this to the police," Jake said firmly after listening. "This is conspiracy to commit fraud, defamation, breaking and entering. Enough to put him away." "Not yet," I decided. "Let's see how far he's willing to go. With these recordings and the security footage of him breaking into our house, we have enough to protect ourselves. But I want them to fully reveal themselves." "Tasha, that's dangerous." "No," I said, thinking of Grandma's careful planning. "It's strategic. Grandma waited 40 years for the right moment to reveal her truth. She knew her grandchildren's characters would eventually show themselves completely. We're almost there." That night, I sat with the rusty key thinking about the 10 lighthouses I still needed to visit. Each one held more pieces of Grandma's story, more evidence of her incredible vision. But also, at each one, I felt closer to her understanding, more about the woman who'd raised me to see beyond surface appearances. My siblings thought they were fighting for money. They didn't understand they were really fighting against their own natures, their own choices. Grandma had given them exactly what they could handle. Enough money to be comfortable, but not enough to satisfy their endless appetite for more. She'd given me something far more challenging, the responsibility to continue her life's work, and despite my siblings' increasingly desperate attempts to steal it, I would honor that trust. The war wasn't over, but the battles were revealing everything Grandma had known all along. Character like rust on a key was only surface deep. Underneath, the true metal would always show through. The Hartley Industries headquarters stood gleaming in Portland's business district, 47 stories of glass and steel that I'd passed hundreds of times without ever connecting it to Grandma. The executive reception area was all marble and modern art, a world away from her cozy craft room and lighthouse paintings. Yet here I stood, rusty key in hand, watching CEO Robert Hartley's expression shift from polite skepticism to stunned recognition. "My God," he breathed, examining the key under his desk lamp. "She said someone would come, but after 5 years I thought, please sit down, Ms. Harper, we have much to discuss." The story he told over the next hour rewrote everything I thought I knew about Grandma's life. Eleanor Harper wasn't just an investor. Hartley explained, pulling out archived photographs. She was our founder. The entire company was her vision, built under aliases and shell corporations to protect her family from what she called the curse of visible wealth. The photos showed a younger grandma in business attire, shaking hands with tech pioneers, signing documents, standing proudly in front of the first Hartley Industries facility. But she wasn't Eleanor Harper in these pictures. She was Helena Hartwright, reclusive billionaire philanthropist. "She chose me as the public face 30 years ago," Hartley continued. "I was a young engineer with ideas but no capital. She offered me the deal of a lifetime. Run her company publicly while she guided it from the shadows. In return, I received a generous salary and stock options, but she maintained true ownership through a complex trust structure." "Why hide it?" I asked, though I suspected the answer. She'd seen what inherited wealth did to families. Her own siblings destroyed their parents fighting over money. She vowed her fortune would be different, earned through innovation, protected from greed, and ultimately used for social good. She said visible wealth attracted the wrong kind of attention from the wrong kind of people. He led me to a private elevator accessible only with executive codes. She insisted on building something into our headquarters that no one else knows about, called it her insurance policy. The elevator descended past the parking garage to a sub-basement level, not shown on any public building plans. The doors opened to reveal a vast, secure facility, part vault, part museum, part command center. The rusty key fit into a master panel that brought the entire space to life. "Welcome to the real Hartley Industries," Robert said softly, "your grandmother's true legacy." The walls displayed the company's real history, every innovation, every patent, every acquisition meticulously documented. But more than corporate records, it told a human story. Photos showed Grandma working alongside engineers, testing products with end users, visiting factories to ensure worker conditions met her standards. "She came here monthly until her illness," Robert explained. "Always checking, always planning. She knew every employee's name, every project's status. The official board thought I was obsessive about details. They never knew I was reporting to her." One wall displayed financial records that made my head spin. Hartley Industries was valued at $8 billion publicly, but the private holdings, the patent's real estate subsidiary companies, totaled nearly $30 billion, all held in trusts with ironclad social benefit requirements. "This is impossible," I whispered. "How did no one know? Your grandmother was a genius at hiding in plain sight, who suspects a retired teacher who paints lighthouses. She lived modestly, drove ordinary cars, shopped at regular stores. Meanwhile, she was running a corporate empire that employed thousands and improved millions of lives through our products." A section labeled Special Projects caught my eye. Each lighthouse location was marked on a digital map, connected by glowing lines to form a network. "The lighthouse vaults," I said. Robert nodded. "Each one contains regional records backups and autonomous operational centers. If anything happened to headquarters, any lighthouse could run the entire company. She called it distributed resilience." I found myself sinking into a chair, overwhelmed. The grandma who taught me to bake cookies had simultaneously been orchestrating billion-dollar deals. The woman who spent afternoons painting had been revolutionizing elder care technology. "There's more," Robert said gently. "Pull up the file labeled Family Assessment." The screen filled with surveillance footage spanning years. Marcus at his investment firm bragging about crushing smaller companies. Diana at charity galas mocking new money donors while contributing nothing herself. both siblings repeatedly trying to access Grandma's finances, hiring lawyers, attempting manipulation. And then there was me, working overtime at the shelter, tutoring kids for free, visiting Grandma, not on her birthday or holidays, but on random Tuesdays just because. The file contained every kindness, every selfless act, every moment that proved character over greed. She documented everything, Robert explained. Said she needed empirical evidence for her most important decision. The succession plan activated the moment you used that key. I've been waiting 5 years to hand over control. Control. My voice cracked. I can't run a billion-dollar company. I'm a social worker. Which is exactly why you're perfect. He smiled. Eleanor didn't want someone who'd be seduced by power. She wanted someone who understood service. I'll continue as public CEO if you wish, but all major decisions will require your approval. You'll control the trust that owns everything. A screen alerted us to security breach attempts at 3 lighthouse locations, all marked with Marcus and Diana's phone GPS signatures. They were systematically trying to break into the vaults, having figured out the pattern, but lacking the keys. Should we alert authorities? Robert asked. Not yet. I decided, thinking like Grandma would. Let them exhaust themselves chasing shadows. The vaults won't open without biometric confirmation anyway. Biometric, Robert smiled. Your grandmother's final safety measure. The key opens the doors, but full access requires a DNA match to her designated heir. She left samples with clear instructions. I spent the next 4 hours in that underground command center, absorbing the scope of what Grandma had built. Medical devices that helped people age with dignity. Educational platforms providing free training to underserved communities. Housing innovations making sustainable homes affordable. Every project reflected her values. She also kept special files, Robert said, pulling up another section, on your siblings' business dealings. The records showed Marcus's company had been competing unsuccessfully against Hartley subsidiaries for years. Every major contract he'd lost, every innovation that had outpaced his. All had been Grandma's companies, though he never knew it. She was protecting the market from him, I realized. His business practices were predatory. She made sure he could succeed enough to feel important, but never enough to actually hurt people. While simultaneously donating millions to your shelter and others like it, Robert added, though always anonymously. She said true charity never seeks recognition. My phone buzzed with increasingly frantic texts from both siblings. They'd been turned away from 4 lighthouses now, and their frustration was boiling over. Diana's latest message was barely coherent, mixing threats with pleas. Marcus had sent a photo of legal documents. He was attempting to have me declared missing and himself appointed as temporary guardian of my assets. How long before they realize the truth? Robert asked. They never will, I said with certainty. They'll never understand that Grandma's real treasure wasn't money. It was the ability to create positive change. They could have had it all if they'd shown even basic human decency. Instead, they got exactly what they valued. Cash, nothing more. Before leaving, Robert handed me a portfolio containing immediate decisions requiring attention. A medical research lab needed funding approval. A housing development for seniors required final design choices. Employee bonuses awaited authorization. Real choices affecting real people. Your grandmother always said the best leaders are reluctant ones, he offered. Those who seek power rarely deserve it. Those who accept it as service usually excel. I thought about the shelter my clients, the life Jake and I had built. I don't have to change everything. Change nothing or everything, your choice. Eleanor kept her public life separate for 40 years, though she did use her position to funnel resources where they were needed most. As I rode the elevator back to the public floors, the weight of responsibility settled on my shoulders, but also, strangely, a sense of rightness. Every lesson Grandma had taught, every value she'd instilled, had been preparing me for this moment. Outside, Portland's skyline glittered in the afternoon sun. Somewhere in the city, my siblings were still chasing shadows, hunting for treasure in all the wrong places. They'd never think to look in corporate boardrooms or technology centers. Their imagination was limited to buried gold and hidden cash. I drove home carefully, the portfolio beside me containing enough power to change thousands of lives. Jake would be shocked. We'd need careful planning to manage this transition while maintaining our privacy and values. But first, I had 9 more lighthouses to visit. Each would reveal more pieces of Grandma's empire, more responsibility to accept or delegate. The rusty key had opened more than vaults. It had opened a future I never imagined, but somehow felt destined to embrace. Grandma had spent 40 years as Helena Hartwright, building an empire designed to outlive her and serve others. Now it was my turn to decide how that empire would evolve. The scared little girl who'd clung to her hand at the lighthouse had grown into a woman capable of carrying her torch. The text messages from my siblings continued. Let them search. Let them rage. They were chasing ghosts while I was discovering that the real fortune Grandma left wasn't hidden at all. It had been operating in plain sight, improving lives and creating opportunities waiting for someone who could see its true value. The lighthouse paintings made sense now. Each one marked not just a location, but a beacon of hope, Grandma's network of light pushing back against the darkness of greed and selfishness. And now, finally, I understood my part in keeping those lights burning. The 12th lighthouse vault, hidden beneath the Rockland breakwater light, contained the most personal archives yet. While previous locations had revealed Grandma's business empire, this one exposed the wounds that had driven her to build it. I sat in the climate-controlled chamber surrounded by documents that painted a picture of betrayal deeper than I'd imagined. Jake sat beside me, having taken a day off to accompany me after the security concerns. We read together, our hearts breaking with each revealed detail. The story began in 1958. Grandma's parents, Harold and Margaret Winters, had built a successful shipping company from nothing. Their 3 children, Eleanor, my grandma, her brother William and sister Catherine, had grown up comfortable, but not wealthy. The parents emphasized hard work, integrity, and family loyalty. Then oil was discovered on property they owned in Texas. Overnight, the Winters family fortune multiplied, and overnight, William and Catherine transformed from loving siblings into scheming predators. The documents included court transcripts, letters, and photographs documenting a systematic campaign to destroy their parents and steal everything. William convinced Harold to sign power of attorney during a manufactured health scare. Catherine manipulated Margaret into doubting her husband's faithfulness, creating discord that weakened their partnership. Together, the siblings liquidated assets, transferred properties, and emptied accounts, while their parents struggled to understand what was happening. My God, Jake breathed, reading a particularly cruel letter from Catherine to Eleanor. She actually bragged about it. The letter, dated December 1962, showed Catherine gloating over their parents' bankruptcy. They were too trusting, too weak, she'd written. Business is war and they lost. At least you were smart enough to stay out of it, though I suppose a kindergarten teacher wouldn't understand high finance anyway. Eleanor had been 24, watching her parents lose everything to children they'd loved and trusted. Harold died of a heart attack 6 months later. Margaret followed within the year, doctors citing broken heart syndrome. She'd literally died of grief. This is why she hid everything, I said, understanding flooding through me. She saw what visible wealth did to her own family. The next section contained Eleanor's journals from those years. Her pain bled through every page, but so did her determination. While working as a teacher by day, she studied business at night. She saved every penny invested carefully and slowly built the foundation of what would become Hartley Industries. I will create wealth they cannot touch, she'd written. I will build an empire they cannot see, and I will ensure that greed never again destroys what love has built. The surveillance section showed she'd kept tabs on William and Catherine throughout their lives. Both had burned through their stolen fortune within a decade. Bad investments lawsuits and their own paranoid infighting had destroyed them financially. William died bankrupt in 1983. Catherine spent her last years in a state nursing home, her children having abandoned her after the money ran out. She could have helped them, Jake observed. With all her wealth, she could have saved them from poverty. Would you have? I asked. After what they did, he considered. No, probably not. But Grandma had helped, I discovered. Anonymous payments to William's children's college funds, quality care upgrades at Catherine's nursing home. She'd ensured the next generation didn't suffer for their parents' sins, but she'd never revealed herself as the benefactor. The deepest box contained videos transferred from old film. Grandma had recorded messages over the years updating her story and intentions. I inserted the first disc dated 1995. Grandma appeared on screen younger but unmistakably herself. If you're watching this, it means you found the key and understood its purpose. I pray it's you, Tasha, but if fate has other plans, I hope whoever holds this carries forward the mission. She spoke for 40 minutes detailing not just what she'd built, but why. Every decision traced back to preventing another William and Catherine. The Lighthouse network provided physical security. The corporate anonymity prevented family targeting. The trust structures ensured money served society, not selfishness. I tested all 3 of my grandchildren, she said, and I leaned forward. Small things at first. Who would share their candy? Who would help without being asked? Who would choose right over easy? Video clips played showing childhood moments I'd forgotten. Marcus pushing Diana to get the bigger piece of cake. Diana hiding Grandma's glasses to avoid reading time. Me at age 6 giving my birthday money to a homeless man because he looked sad. By the time they were teenagers, the patterns were clear. Grandma continued. Marcus had William's calculating nature. Diana had Catherine's material obsession. But Tasha, you had your grandfather's heart. You saw people, not possibilities, for profit. Jake squeezed my hand as tears ran down my face. The video jumped to 2005. Marcus tried to convince me to invest in his company today. When I declined, he said I was too old to understand modern business. He doesn't know I own the patent his entire business model depends on. Another jump to 2015. Diana brought her financial advisor to Thanksgiving, hoping to corner me into estate planning. She actually used the phrase, maximizing inheritance potential. They never visit unless they want something. Only Tasha comes just to paint to talk to be. The final segment was from just 6 months ago. Grandma looked frail but fierce. I'm dying. The doctors give me weeks. I've arranged everything. The will they'll see is real but incomplete. The visible inheritance will satisfy their greed temporarily. But you, my dear one, will receive my true legacy. The power to ensure wealth serves wisdom. She leaned toward the camera. They'll fight you. They'll try to destroy you as William and Catherine destroyed my parents. But you're stronger than they know. You have something they lack, the ability to see beyond yourself. Use what I've built. Grow it. Share it. And never ever let them reduce you to their level. The video ended with her holding up the rusty key. This opens doors, but your heart opens possibilities. I love you, Tasha. Make me proud. Jake held me as I sobbed 40 years of Grandma's pain and purpose crashing over me. She'd transformed the worst betrayal imaginable into an engine for good. She'd taken her siblings' greed and alchemized it into generosity that touched millions of lives. Look at this, Jake said gently, directing my attention to another document. It was a ledger of donations, investments, and interventions spanning decades. Every time Marcus's predatory business practices targeted a vulnerable company, one of Grandma's subsidiaries had intervened. Every charity gala Diana attended for show, Grandma had quietly funded for real. She'd been their guardian angel even as they plotted against her. She never stopped loving them, I realized. She just loved them from a distance, protecting them from themselves while protecting others from them. My phone rang, Lauren Marcus's soon-to-be ex-wife. Tasha, I'm at the courthouse filing divorce papers, and you need to know. Marcus and that investigator Cross are here too. They're filing something big, multiple documents. The clerk looked shocked. Thanks for the warning. I said, though I felt strangely calm. Grandma had prepared for everything. Sure enough, an hour later, legal notices arrived electronically. Marcus had filed comprehensive fraud charges claiming I'd manipulated a mentally incompetent elderly woman into changing her will. Diana had separately filed for conservatorship over my assets, citing my break from reality and need for family intervention. But they'd made a crucial error. In their greed-fueled haste, they'd included claims about Grandma's hidden fortune, citing specific dollar amounts and asset descriptions they could only have obtained through illegal means. Breaking into vaults, hacking systems, corporate espionage. They just confessed to multiple felonies, Jake said, reading the documents. In writing, in court filings. I called Mr. Whitfield. It's time. I've been waiting for your word, he replied. Everything is prepared. They've provided all the evidence we need. Shall I proceed? Proceed. The final pieces were moving into position. My siblings thought they were closing a trap on me, but they'd walked into Grandma's carefully constructed web. 40 years of planning was about to culminate in a lesson about the true cost of greed. That night, I sat with the rusty key thinking about cycles and choices. Grandma had faced betrayal and chosen building over bitterness. She'd faced loss and chosen love over revenge. Now I faced my own crossroads. What will you do? Jake asked. When they realize what they've lost, I thought about William and Catherine dying alone and bitter, about second chances and family patterns, about Grandma's secretly supported nieces and nephews who'd grown into good people despite their parents. I'll do what Grandma would do, I decided. I'll ensure they can't hurt anyone, but I won't destroy them. There's been enough destruction in this family. Tomorrow would bring revelations that would shatter my siblings' world, but perhaps eventually it might also bring redemption. Grandma had believed in transformation through truth. Soon Marcus and Diana would face the truth of what they'd thrown away in pursuit of what they thought they wanted. The lighthouse beacons continued their ancient work, warning of danger, guiding towards safety, standing firm through storms, just as Grandma intended, just as I would continue. The conference room at Whitfield and Associates felt smaller with all of us present. Marcus sat rigid in his Italian suit, fingers drumming against the mahogany table. Diana clutched her designer handbag like a shield, her usually perfect makeup showing stress cracks. Their lawyers, a team of 3 from Portland's most aggressive firm, shuffled papers with predatory anticipation. Mr. Whitfield sat calmly at the head of the table, a slight smile playing at his lips. Beside me, Jake provided silent support. But the real presence in the room was the stack of documents I'd placed in the center of the table, topped with a single USB drive. Thank you all for coming, Mr. Whitfield began. Ms. Harper has requested this meeting to address the recent legal actions filed by her siblings. This is ridiculous, Marcus interrupted. We're here to discuss Tasha's mental health and the fraud she's perpetrating. We have evidence. You have nothing, I said quietly. But I have everything. Diana leaned forward. Tasha, please. We know about the lighthouses. We know about the vaults. Just tell us what Grandma left you and we can work this out like family. Family. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Was it family when you tried to have Grandma declared incompetent? Was it family when you broke into my home? Was it family when you hired investigators to stalk me? We were concerned, Diana protested weakly. You were greedy, I corrected, and now you're going to learn what that greed has cost you. I pushed the USB drive toward the center of the table. Mr. Whitfield, would you please play file 1? The wall-mounted screen came to life, showing security footage from Marcus's office building. There he was meeting with Vincent Cross, clearly discussing plans to plant evidence at lighthouse locations. The audio was crystal clear. Marcus's own security system had recorded his conspiracy to frame me. His face went pale. That's taken out of context. File 2, please. Now the screen showed Diana at various bank branches trying to access Grandma's accounts using forged documents. Each attempt was time-stamped, location verified, and showed her presenting false power of attorney papers. "I can explain," Diana stammered. File 3. Lauren's recordings played next. Marcus's voice filled the room, detailing his plans to destroy my career, manufacture evidence of mental illness, and steal whatever inheritance I'd received. His own words condemned him more thoroughly than any prosecutor could. The lawyers were frantically whispering to their clients, obviously unprepared for this turn. "But we're just getting started," I said, pulling out the first document stack. "This is a cease and desist order already filed with the court regarding your harassment. This one details the criminal charges being pressed for breaking and entering conspiracy to commit fraud, defamation, and attempted theft." "You can't prove," Marcus started. "This," I continued, pulling out another folder, "contains the signed affidavits from 17 lighthouse groundskeepers who witnessed your attempts to break into private property. This has the forensic computer analysis showing your hacking attempts. And this," I held up the thickest folder, "documents every single time you tried to manipulate, threaten, or steal from Grandma over the past 20 years. Diana was crying now, mascara running in dark streams. "We just wanted what was fair." Fair. I stood 40 years of Grandma's pain fueling my words. "Let me tell you about fair. Grandma's siblings stole everything from their parents, left them to die broken and penniless. She spent her entire life ensuring that betrayal would never happen again. She built an empire not for personal gain, but to serve others, and she tested each of us to see who would carry that legacy forward." I pulled out the Hartley Industries ownership documents. Both siblings gasped, recognizing the corporate name. "That's right," I confirmed. "Grandma wasn't just some retired teacher who painted lighthouses. She was Helena Hartwright, founder and majority owner of Hartley Industries, a company worth approximately $30 billion. Marcus's calculator brain was working. $30 billion, which you'll never touch, I continued. Because when you signed those papers at the will reading, you signed away rights to any undisclosed assets. You were so eager to get your $5 million that you didn't read what you were agreeing to." "That's fraud," one of their lawyers sputtered. Mr. Whitfield spoke for the first time since starting the recording. "Actually, it's ironclad legal documentation. I have 43 years of case law supporting similar inheritance structures. They received exactly what was promised. $5 million each. They voluntarily waived rights to anything else. But more importantly," I said, sitting back down, "even if you could challenge it legally, you can't access it. The entire fortune is held in irrevocable trusts dedicated to social benefit, medical research, affordable housing, education initiatives. It can never be liquidated for personal gain, ever." "You're lying," Diana whispered. "There has to be a way." "File 4, please." The screen now showed the trust documents, the corporate structure, the billions in assets, all locked away from personal use. It showed my role as trustee, a position that came with responsibility but not personal wealth beyond a reasonable salary. "I can direct where funds go to help others," I explained. "I can ensure Grandma's vision continues, but I can't buy yachts or mansions. Neither can you. The money exists to serve, not to hoard." Marcus slammed his fist on the table. "This is insane. We're her grandchildren, too. We deserve—" File 5. The final video was Grandma herself, recorded just weeks before her death. She looked directly into the camera, directly at her grandchildren. Marcus, Diana. Her voice was sad but firm. "If you're watching this, it means you chose greed over family just as my siblings did. I gave you chance after chance to show kindness, generosity, basic human decency. Instead, you showed me calculation, materialism, and cruelty." Diana sobbed harder. Marcus sat frozen. "I don't hate you," Grandma continued. "I love you enough to prevent you from destroying yourselves and others with wealth you're not equipped to handle. The $5 million each was generous, more than most people see in a lifetime. Be grateful, live modestly, find meaning beyond money. She paused, then looked directly at where I sat. Tasha, my dear one, you understood that painting lighthouses with me was worth more than any dollar amount. You saw the value in stories and service in simple presence. That's why you'll shepherd what I built, not as an owner, but as a guardian. The real inheritance was never money. It was purpose. The video ended. Silence filled the room like fog. Their lead lawyer cleared his throat. My clients need time to process this information. We'll be withdrawing all legal actions immediately. Not good enough, I said. Your clients engaged in criminal behavior. They have two choices: sign comprehensive agreements to cease all harassment and accept the criminal charges, or I'll pursue both civil and criminal cases to the fullest extent. Tasha, Marcus's voice was broken. You're really going to send us to jail? I looked at my brother, remembering the boy who'd once shared his Halloween candy with me before money became his measure of everything. No, I'm going to give you what Grandma gave her siblings' children, a second chance. You'll face consequences, probably probation and community service, but you'll have the opportunity to become better people. How generous, Diana said bitterly. It is generous. Jake spoke for the first time. Tasha could destroy you both. Instead, she's offering redemption. That's more than you offered her. Mr. Whitfield produced new documents. Confession, restitution, and restraining agreements. Sign these, accept the legal consequences of your actions, and begin rebuilding your lives, or face the full weight of what you've done. As they signed hands, shaking, I felt no triumph, only sadness for what could have been. 3 grandchildren who could have worked together to amplify Grandma's legacy. Instead, 2 had chosen the path of their great-aunt and uncle, learning too late that some prizes aren't worth winning. One more thing, I said as they prepared to leave. The trust has provisions for education and rehabilitation. If you genuinely want to change to understand what Grandma was trying to teach, funds are available for therapy, education, even startup capital for charitable ventures, but only for genuine growth, not manipulation. Marcus looked at me with something like wonder. You're offering to help us. After everything, Grandma helped the children of siblings who destroyed her parents. She believed in breaking cycles. So do I. Diana clutched the papers to her chest. I don't understand you. I know, I said sadly. That's always been the problem. They left broken, but not destroyed. Their lawyers followed, already calculating reduced fees for a lost cause. Mr. Whitfield began organizing papers while Jake held my hand. You did the right thing, he said softly. I did what Grandma would have done, I corrected. She knew this day would come. She planned for it. Every document, every recording, every piece of evidence. She made sure I'd have what I needed to stand firm without becoming cruel. That evening, I sat in Grandma's craft room in the cottage, surrounded by her lighthouse paintings. Each one represented not just a location, but a lesson. Perseverance through storms, guidance through darkness, standing firm on solid foundations. My phone buzzed with messages from Robert Hartley, already implementing the expansion plans I'd approved. More medical clinics in underserved areas, educational programs for at-risk youth, innovation labs focused on accessibility technology. Grandma's fortune, freed from the threat of my siblings' greed, could now flow toward its intended purpose. Marcus and Diana would survive. Their $5 million each, even diminished by legal fees, would provide comfortable lives if they learned moderation. Whether they'd learn deeper lessons remained to be seen, but at least now they had the chance Grandma's siblings never took, the opportunity to choose meaning over money. The rusty key sat on the easel where Grandma had once mixed paints. It had unlocked so much more than vaults. It had revealed character, exposed truth, and ultimately freed an empire built on integrity to continue serving those who needed it most. Tomorrow I'd visit the remaining lighthouses, completing the journey Grandma had mapped. But tonight, I simply sat where she'd sat, seeing what she'd seen, understanding finally that the greatest treasures couldn't be deposited, withdrawn, or stolen. They could only be earned through love, protected through wisdom, and shared through service. The lighthouse beam swept across the darkness, eternal and reassuring. Grandma's true legacy lived in their light, not in what they were worth, but in whom they guided safely home. The courthouse steps seemed steeper than usual as I climbed them. 6 weeks later, Jake steady at my side. Despite signing the agreements, my siblings had found new lawyers, ones who specialized in what Mr. Whitfield called nuisance litigation. They couldn't win, but they could make the process painful, expensive, and public. Inside, the courtroom was packed. Word had leaked about the Hartley Industries connection, and Portland's business community was fascinated by the drama. I recognized reporters, local business leaders, and even some clients from the shelter who'd come to support me. Judge Patricia Kennerly, a silver-haired woman with piercing eyes, called the session to order. We're here to address the Harper siblings' motion to overturn the inheritance distribution of Eleanor Harper's estate. I've reviewed the extensive documentation. Let's proceed. Marcus and Diana sat with their new legal team faces composed into masks of wounded dignity. They'd been coached well. Gone were the designer clothes and arrogant attitudes. Instead, they projected humility and hurt, playing the role of cheated grandchildren. Their lead attorney, Harrison Banks, stood with theatrical gravity. "Your Honor, my clients aren't seeking to overturn their grandmother's wishes. They simply want fairness and transparency in a situation riddled with deception." Deception. Judge Kennerly's eyebrow arched. Elaborate counselor. Eleanor Harper led her grandchildren to believe her estate consisted primarily of the family home and modest savings. She never disclosed her identity as Helena Hartright or her ownership of Hartley Industries. This deliberate concealment constitutes fraud against natural heirs. I felt Jake tense beside me, but Mr. Whitfield remained serene. Banks continued, "Furthermore, we have evidence that Ms. Tasha Harper exerted undue influence over her grandmother, isolating her from other family members and manipulating her into this grossly unequal distribution." "I'd like to see this evidence," the judge said dryly. What followed was a master class in legal misdirection. Banks presented photos of me visiting Grandma, spun as excessive presence. Records of my siblings' sparse visits were explained as being driven away by the defendant's possessiveness. Even my work at the shelter was twisted into evidence of manipulation, creating a false persona of charity to influence a vulnerable elder. When Banks finally sat, Judge Kennerly turned to our side. "Mr. Whitfield." Our attorney rose slowly, carrying a single folder. "Your Honor, I have here sworn affidavits from 47 individuals who interacted with Eleanor Harper in her final years. Shall I read them all, or would highlights suffice?" "Highlights, please." Martha Rodriguez registered nurse Eleanor was sharp as a tack until the end. She often expressed sadness that Marcus and Diana only visited when they needed money. Thomas Chen, groundskeeper Mrs. Harper, told me she was testing her grandchildren. Only Tasha passed. Dr. Sarah Williams, geriatrician. I examined Eleanor monthly. No cognitive decline. She was fully capable of making financial decisions. Janet Palmer, shelter director. Tasha never mentioned her grandmother's wealth. She seemed genuinely surprised by the inheritance. Mr. Whitfield set down the folder. Additionally, Your Honor, I'd like to present security footage from Eleanor Harper's home. The courtroom screens lit up with dated footage. There was Marcus visiting Grandma only to demand investment money, Diana photographing valuables while Grandma dozed, both siblings searching through drawers when they thought they were alone. Contrast this, Mr. Whitfield said, with Ms. Tasha Harper. New footage, me cooking with Grandma, no discussion of money, reading together on the porch, talking about everything except finances, helping her with physical therapy after her fall, gentle and patient. But the most compelling evidence, Mr. Whitfield continued, comes from Marcus and Diana Harper themselves. The screens now showed the siblings' signed agreements from our confrontation. Their confessions to harassment, breaking and entering, and attempted fraud were clearly visible. Banks jumped up. Those were signed under duress. Duress? Judge Kennerly leaned forward. Were they threatened with physical harm? No, but were they denied legal counsel? No, however. Then sit down, Mr. Banks. Mr. Whitfield wasn't finished. Your Honor, the plaintiffs claim they were deceived about Eleanor Harper's wealth. I'd like to present evidence of their own attempts at deception. What followed was devastating. Records showed Marcus had tried to have Grandma declared incompetent 3 times. Diana had attempted to forge power of attorney documents. Both had hired private investigators to surveil their grandmother, looking for signs of wealth to exploit. It seems, Judge Kennerly observed, the only deception here was the plaintiff's belief that they could manipulate their grandmother as easily as they attempted to manipulate this court. Banks made one last attempt. Your Honor, regardless of past actions, my clients are blood relatives who received a pittance compared to their sister. The disparity alone suggests— Counselor. The judge interrupted. Are you aware of the nature of Ms. Tasha Harper's inheritance? Well, the details are sealed, but— Mr. Whitfield, please educate opposing counsel. Our attorney pulled out the trust documents. Ms. Tasha Harper inherited the responsibility to manage charitable trusts. She cannot access the principal for personal use. Her compensation is equivalent to a nonprofit director's salary. Every dollar beyond that must serve charitable purposes. I watched my siblings' faces as this sank in. They'd spent weeks imagining me rolling in billions, never understanding the true nature of Grandma's legacy. Furthermore, Mr. Whitfield added, Eleanor Harper left provisions for her grandchildren to access funds for education therapy and charitable ventures. They need only apply with genuine intentions. Which they haven't done, Judge Kennerly noted. Instead, they've chosen litigation. The judge called a recess. In the hallway, Diana approached me, mascara smudged but designer dress intact. I don't understand you, she whispered. You could have had it all. I do have it all, I replied. I have purpose, meaningful work, and the chance to continue Grandma's legacy. What do you have besides your 5 million? She walked away without answering. When court reconvened, Judge Kennerly delivered her verdict with surgical precision. The court finds no evidence of undue influence fraud or mental incapacity. Eleanor Harper's will stands as written. Furthermore, given the plaintiff's documented harassment and criminal behavior, I'm issuing permanent restraining orders. They are forbidden from contacting Ms. Tasha Harper or interfering with the Harper family trust operations. She paused, looking directly at my siblings. I'll add a personal observation. Eleanor Harper gave you both generous inheritances, more than most people see in a lifetime. Your response was to attack the sister, who received a burden disguised as a blessing. Perhaps you should reflect on why your grandmother trusted her with responsibility while gifting you only money. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Mr. Whitfield handled them expertly, providing minimal information while protecting the trust's privacy. But one reporter asked me directly, Ms. Harper, why did your grandmother structure things this way? I thought carefully before answering. She believed wealth should serve society, not individual greed. She saw what happened when money became more important than family. She spent her life ensuring that pattern wouldn't repeat. Do you resent your siblings for this lawsuit? I pity them, I said honestly. They're so focused on what they think they've lost, they can't see what they could still gain. The door to reconciliation remains open, but they have to walk through it themselves. That evening, I found myself back at Portland Headlight. The lighthouse beam swept across the darkening sky, constant and reassuring. Thomas, the groundskeeper, joined me, sharing a thermos of tea. Heard about the verdict, he said. Eleanor would be proud. Would she? Sometimes I wonder if she'd want me to try harder with them. He shook his head. She tried for 40 years with her own siblings. Never worked. Some people have to hit bottom before they look up. Your job isn't to save them, it's to be there if they decide to save themselves. My phone buzzed with messages from various lighthouse keepers. Word had spread through Grandma's network and congratulations poured in. But one message stood out, from Robert Hartley. Board meeting tomorrow. Time to introduce the real owner of Hartley Industries to her empire. Dress code, whatever makes you comfortable. Eleanor always wore paint-stained cardigans to our secret meetings. I laughed, imagining Grandma in her comfortable clothes running $1 billion empire while looking like everyone's grandmother. That was her genius, hiding extraordinary power behind ordinary appearance. Marcus and Diana had lost more than a lawsuit today. They'd lost their last chance to understand that Grandma's greatest gift wasn't what she'd accumulated, but how she'd used it. They saw inheritance as an ending, a final payout. She saw it as a beginning, a torch to be carried forward. 5 more lighthouses remained to visit, 5 more pieces of Grandma's puzzle to uncover. But already I understood the pattern. Each location secured part of an empire built not for glory, but for good. Each trust structured not to hoard, but to help. Each decision guided by the lesson learned from her siblings' betrayal wealth. Without wisdom was destruction waiting to happen. The legal battle was won, but the real work was just beginning. Tomorrow I'd walk into Hartley Industries as Eleanor Harper's chosen heir. Not to count money, but to direct it where it mattered. Not to accumulate power, but to empower others. The lighthouse beam continued its eternal rotation, and I finally understood why Grandma had painted them obsessively. They stood through storms. They guided the lost. They asked nothing for themselves while giving light to others. That was the inheritance she'd truly left. Not the money, not the company, but the understanding that real wealth meant being a lighthouse in someone else's darkness. And unlike my siblings, I was ready to tend that light. The Hartley Industries boardroom occupied the entire 47th floor, its glass walls offering panoramic views of Portland and the ocean beyond. 23 board members sat around the massive conference table, their confusion palpable as they waited to understand why an emergency meeting had been called. Robert Hartley stood at the head of the table, calm and composed. I sat to his right wearing one of Grandma's paint-stained cardigans over my simple dress, a deliberate choice that had already raised eyebrows among the suited executives. "Ladies and gentlemen," Robert began, "for 30 years you've believed I was the founder and majority owner of Hartley Industries. Today you'll learn the truth." He pressed a remote, and the screens around the room lit up with photographs of Grandma, not as the retired teacher they might have recognized, but as Helena Hartright, the brilliant businesswoman who'd built an empire while maintaining complete anonymity. Eleanor Harper, known professionally as Helena Hartright, founded this company in 1973. She handpicked me to be her public face while she remained the true power behind every major decision. She passed away 2 months ago, and her chosen successor is here today. All eyes turned to me. I saw recognition dawn on some faces. They'd seen the news coverage of the lawsuit. "This is preposterous," Richard Blackstone, the CFO, sputtered. "We've run background checks. Helena Hartright was a recluse who was actually a grandmother living quietly in Portland, painting lighthouses and changing the world." I interrupted, standing. "Mr. Blackstone, you joined Hartley Industries in 2005. Your hiring was approved by Helena Hartright after she spent 3 months investigating your background. She particularly appreciated your pro bono work with financial literacy programs." His face went pale. "How could you possibly—" "Because I have her complete files on every person in this room." I moved to the presentation screen. Dr. Martinez hired 2008 for biomedical innovations after your breakthrough in affordable insulin delivery. Ms. Chen brought on in 2012 when your sustainable packaging design caught Helena's attention. Should I continue? Stunned silence filled the room. "My grandmother built this company with specific principles," I continued. "Innovation must serve humanity. Profit enables purpose, but doesn't replace it. Every decision should be measured not just by quarterly earnings, but by generational impact." And you expect us to believe, Blackstone found his voice again, that you're qualified to run a multi-billion-dollar corporation. You're a social worker. Which is precisely why she chose me, I replied. But I'm not here to run day-to-day operations. Robert remains CEO. Department heads maintain their positions. What changes is the vision guiding our decisions. I pulled out a portfolio, not financial projections, but stories. Last year, Hartley Industries made $8 billion in profit. Impressive. But do you know what those numbers mean in human terms? Our medical devices help 3 million seniors age in place. Our educational platforms trained 50,000 unemployed workers for new careers. Our housing innovations provided affordable homes for 20,000 families. We know our impact, Dr. Martinez said defensively. Do you? I challenged. When was the last time any of you visited the communities we serve, talked to the people using our products, understood their needs beyond market research? I clicked through slides showing the lighthouse vaults, the community centers, the quiet work Grandma had done for decades. Helena Hartwright, Eleanor Harper, didn't just build a company. She built a network of support systems designed to outlast any individual. Each of you was chosen not just for your skills, but for your potential to serve this mission. The question now is whether you'll embrace that purpose or resist it. Jennifer Walsh, head of research and development, raised her hand tentatively. What exactly are you proposing? I smiled, the first crack in their corporate armor. Let me show you. The presentation shifted to my vision. Grandma's vision expanded. Innovation labs in underserved communities, partnerships with local nonprofits, products designed with input from end users, not just market analytics. Profit reinvested in solving problems, others ignored. This is financial suicide, someone muttered. Is it? Robert spoke up. Show them the protected projections, Tasha. I revealed the financial modeling we'd done. By focusing on underserved markets, we'd tap into billions of potential customers ignored by competitors. By solving real problems, we'd create brand loyalty that transcended price points. By reinvesting in communities, we'd develop workforces and consumer bases for generations. Doing good, I said, is good business when done right. Mrs. Chen leaned forward. My packaging innovations. I've always wanted to explore biodegradable options for medical supplies, but the board said the profit margins. Explore them, I interrupted. If they serve the mission, we'll find the margins. One by one, board members began sharing ideas they'd shelved, innovations deemed too altruistic for corporate approval. The atmosphere shifted from skepticism to excitement as they realized the shackles of pure profit maximization were being removed. But Blackstone wasn't convinced. This sounds noble, but shareholders. There are no public shareholders, Robert revealed. Hartley Industries has always been privately held. The complex structure of subsidiaries and partnerships obscured one simple fact. Eleanor Harper owned it all. Now the Harper Family Trust owns it with Tasha as the sole trustee. So we answer to a social worker with no business experience, Blackstone said coldly. You answer to someone who understands why this company exists, I corrected. My grandmother didn't need another yacht or private island. She needed to know that her life's work would continue serving others. Each of you has a choice. Stay and be part of something revolutionary or leave with generous severance and my best wishes. And if we stay, Dr. Martinez asked. I pulled out the real surprise. Grandma's files on each board member's passion projects, dreams deferred for profit's sake. Dr. Martinez, you stay and finally develop that rural healthcare delivery system you proposed in 2009. Ms. Chen, you lead the sustainability revolution in packaging. Mr. Thompson, your workforce development ideas that were too expensive, they're now priority one. I watched their faces transform as they realized what was being offered. Not just jobs, but purpose. What about our salaries? Blackstone asked, ever practical. Unchanged, I assured him, though bonuses will now be tied to impact metrics as well as financial ones. Create more value for society, earn more personal reward. Seems fair. "And you," Jennifer Walsh asked, "what do you get from this? A salary comparable to a nonprofit director?" I answered honestly. "The same as my grandmother took. The wealth stays in the trust serving the mission. I'm not here to get rich. I'm here to ensure this company remains true to its founding purpose." Over the next 3 hours, we dove deep into possibilities. The energy was infectious as board members who'd been corporate automatons rediscovered their idealism. Even Blackstone eventually admitted he'd started his career wanting to democratize financial services. As the meeting concluded, Robert asked for a commitment vote. 22 of 23 board members chose to stay. Blackstone abstained, asking for a week to consider. "Take a month," I offered. "Visit our community centers. Talk to people using our products. Then decide if this is where you want to be." As board members filed out, many stopped to shake my hand or share memories of brief encounters with the mysterious Helena Hartwright. She'd touched each of their lives in ways they hadn't realized. Jennifer Walsh lingered. "I met her once," she said quietly. "An elderly woman at a conference who asked brilliant questions about my research. She said innovation without compassion was just clever cruelty. I never forgot that." "That was Grandma." I smiled. She had a gift for being exactly where she needed to be. After everyone left, Robert and I stood at the windows looking out at the city Grandma had quietly shaped for decades. "Think they'll adapt?" he asked. "The ones who matter will," I replied. "The others will self-select out. Grandma always said people rise or fall to meet expectations. We're raising expectations." My phone buzzed. Messages from various department heads already brainstorming projects. The transformation had begun. But one message stood out. "Marcus, saw the news about Hartley Industries. Is it true? Was Grandma really Helena Hartwright?" I typed back, "Yes, she was many things we never imagined." His response came quickly. "I'm starting to understand what we threw away. Is it too late?" I thought about Grandma's belief in second chances, her patience with human frailty. It's never too late to choose differently. The Trust has programs for family members who want to contribute meaningfully, but it starts with understanding service, not demanding profit. "Can we talk?" "When you're ready to listen, not just take." I pocketed my phone and looked at the lighthouse painting Grandma had hung in the boardroom, hidden in plain sight like everything else about her. Tomorrow would bring challenges as we transformed a corporate giant into something unprecedented, a massive company dedicated to serving rather than extracting. But tonight I simply stood where she'd stood, seeing the city through her eyes. Every light represented a life that could be touched, improved, elevated. That was the real Hartley Industries. Not the glass tower, but the network of human connections it could foster. "Ready for tomorrow?" Robert asked. "I've been preparing my whole life," I realized. Every lesson Grandma taught, every value she instilled, it was all for this. The elevator road down felt like descending from Olympus to Earth. But that was where the real work happened, on the ground with people solving problems that mattered. Grandma had built the tools. Now it was time to use them. $5 billion in liquid assets, $25 billion in long-term investments, hundreds of patents, thousands of employees, millions of customers. All of it waiting to be directed toward a simple mission: make the world better, one innovation at a time. The rusty key had opened more than vaults. It had opened a future where business served humanity rather than the reverse. And somewhere in whatever came after this life, I knew Grandma was smiling, paintbrush in hand, adding light to her eternal canvas. 8 months had passed since the boardroom revelation, and the transformation of Hartley Industries was making headlines worldwide. We'd launched initiatives that competitor companies called fiscally irresponsible, until they saw our quarterly reports showing record profits alongside unprecedented social impact. I was reviewing proposals for our new community innovation labs when my assistant knocked. "Ms. Harper, your brother is here. He says you're expecting him." I glanced at my calendar. Marcus had requested this meeting weeks ago after completing the first phase of the family rehabilitation program. Send him in. The man who entered my office bore little resemblance to the arrogant brother who'd torn up our childhood photos. Marcus had lost weight, his expensive suit replaced by simple khakis and a button-down shirt. Most striking were his eyes. The calculating coldness had given way to something I hadn't seen since we were children: humility. Tasha. He stood awkwardly near the door. Thank you for seeing me. Sit. I gestured to the comfortable chairs near the window, the ones Grandma had insisted on instead of formal office furniture. Tell me about the program. He sat carefully as if afraid to take up too much space. It's intensive. Dr. Williams doesn't let me get away with anything. We've been deconstructing why I became so obsessed with wealth, why I valued money over family. And Dad, he said simply. After he left, I swore I'd never be powerless like Mom was. Money meant security. Then it meant power. Then it became everything. He looked out at the Portland skyline. I spent 20 years chasing something that was never going to fill that void. What about your company? His laugh was bitter. What company? It collapsed 2 months after the lawsuit. Turns out when you build a business on crushing others, you make a lot of enemies. Once word got out that I'd lost Grandma's protection, not that I knew she was protecting me, my competitors destroyed me in 6 weeks. I'd watched it happen, choosing not to intervene. Some lessons had to be learned through experience. Diana warned me, he continued. She said you could have saved my business but chose not to. I hated you for that. Until therapy helped me understand you'd been saving me my whole life, and I'd been too blind to see it. Diana spoke to you. She's in the program too. Different track. Hers is about identity beyond material possessions. Bradley divorced her, took half the money. She's living in a 1-bedroom apartment in Westbrook working at a non-profit. Working. Volunteer work technically. Part of her rehabilitation. She's teaching financial literacy to single mothers. He smiled wryly. Turns out she's good at it when she's not obsessed with spending. Who knew? I pulled up the family trust files on my tablet. You've completed Phase 1. Dr. Williams recommends you for Phase 2, the entrepreneurship program. Are you interested? His eyes widened. You'd trust me with startup capital. Not trust, I corrected. Test. $50,000 in seed money for a business that serves community needs. You'll have mentorship, oversight, and strict ethical guidelines. Success means the chance to expand. Failure means starting over. What if I revert to old patterns? Then you'll face the consequences. But Grandma believed in second chances, and so do I. He was quiet for a long moment. I've been thinking about elder care technology. Something that helps isolated seniors connect with family. Ironic, right? Creating for others. What I denied Grandma. Pain can be a teacher if we let it. May I ask you something? At my nod, he continued. When you found out about Hartley Industries, about the billions, weren't you tempted, even a little? Every day, I admitted. But then I remember Grandma in her paint-stained cardigan, happy with her tea and lighthouses. She had everything and wanted nothing beyond purpose. That's the example I follow. I couldn't do it. What you do. 8 months ago, neither could I. We grow into our responsibilities. A knock interrupted us. Diana stood in the doorway looking nervous. She wore simple clothes, her designer accessories long gone. Like Marcus, she seemed diminished, but somehow more real. I'm sorry, she stammered. Marcus said he was coming, and I thought, She took a breath. I wanted to apologize, in person, for everything. I gestured for her to join us. She sat beside Marcus, and for a moment we were just 3 siblings, no pretense between us. I was so cruel, Diana said, tears threatening. The things I said, the way I mocked you, and Grandma. I called her paintings worthless. I threatened to burn her recipes. How did I become that person? Fear, I said gently. You were afraid of being ordinary. She nodded miserably. Bradley convinced me I was special because of money. Without it, who was I, just another divorced woman approaching 40 with no real skills or purpose? But that's changing. The women I work with, Tasha, they're incredible. Single mothers working 3 jobs, going to school, raising kids. They have nothing but give everything. I'm learning what real strength looks like. Marcus reached over and took Diana's hand, the first genuine sibling affection I'd seen between them in years. We were wondering, Marcus said carefully, if maybe we could work together, pool our rehabilitation funds, create something bigger. Diana's financial literacy program plus my elder care technology, help seniors avoid financial exploitation while staying connected. You've thought this through. We've been meeting, Diana admitted. Not plotting this time, just talking about Grandma, about growing up, about how we lost our way. We want to find our way back. I studied them both. 8 months ago, they'd tried to destroy me. Now they sat here stripped of pretense, asking for guidance. Grandma would have been cautiously hopeful. There's a family dinner, I said slowly. Once a month, Jake and I host dinner for anyone in the Harper Rehabilitation Program. Informal, supportive, no judgment. Would you be interested? Their faces lit up like children offered an unexpected gift. Really, Diana breathed. You'd welcome us into your home. Family is about choice as much as blood. You're choosing to change. That earns a chance. We talked for another hour about their ideas, their struggles, their slow recognition of how much damage they'd done. When they left, both hugged me, awkwardly but genuinely. That evening, I met Jake at our favorite restaurant overlooking the harbor. I told him about the meeting over seafood and local wine. You're more forgiving than I would be, he said. Not forgiving, hopeful. There's a difference. What if they relapse, go back to their old ways? Then they face consequences. But what if they don't? What if they become the people Grandma always hoped they could be? Ever the social worker, he smiled, believing in redemption. Ever the firefighter, I countered, protecting me from getting burned. We walked along the waterfront after dinner, passing the lighthouse where everything had started. Thomas was there, tending the grounds as always. Heard your siblings are in the program, he called out. Eleanor would be pleased. Would she? She spent 40 years hoping her own siblings would change. They never did, but she never stopped believing it was possible. That's the thing about lighthouse keepers. We always leave the light on. At home that night, I sat in my studies surrounded by reports of Hartley Industries' impact. Medical devices reaching remote communities, educational programs transforming lives, innovations solving problems others ignored, Grandma's vision made manifest. But the real success sat in 2 files on my desk, Marcus and Diana's rehabilitation reports, flawed people making genuine efforts to change. It wasn't the fortune Grandma had left them, but it might be worth more in the end. The rusty key sat on my bookshelf, no longer needed but kept as a reminder. It had unlocked vaults and revealed secrets, but its greatest power was showing people their true selves. Marcus and Diana had finally seen themselves clearly and chosen to become better. The phone rang. Robert Hartley with news of another successful quarter and 3 new community partnerships. After we discussed business, he asked, "How did it go with your siblings?" Cautiously optimistic, I replied. They're trying. That's all any of us can do, he said. Try to be better than we were yesterday. Your grandmother knew that. It's why she built in so many second chances. After we hung up, I pulled out Grandma's last letter to me, the one I'd found in the final lighthouse vault. My dearest Tasha, if you're reading this, you've completed the journey and understood the lesson. Wealth is just a tool. It can build or destroy, heal or harm. I spent my life ensuring it would build and heal. Now it's your turn. But remember, the money isn't the legacy. The legacy is how we treat each other, how we lift others, how we choose love over greed. Your siblings may surprise you yet. People can change if given the chance. Be the lighthouse that guides them home. All my love, Grandma. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to use Grandma's fortune for good. But tonight I felt the satisfaction of seeds planted. Marcus and Diana might bloom or wither, but at least they'd been given soil and sunshine. The karma Grandma had set in motion decades ago continued to unfold. Those who chose greed found emptiness. Those who chose service found purpose. And those who chose to change found chances. In the end, the rusty key had unlocked exactly what everyone needed. Not what they wanted, but what would make them whole. For my siblings, that meant losing everything to find themselves. For me, it meant gaining responsibility to serve others. Different locks, different treasures, but all part of Grandma's grand design. A design that turned a rusty key into an instrument of transformation, one heart at a time. 1 year later, the Harper Family Community Center stood where an abandoned warehouse had once blighted Portland's east side. Inside, the ribbon-cutting ceremony brought together an unlikely assembly. City officials, Hartley Industries executives, shelter clients, and at the center of it all, my siblings. Marcus stood at the podium nervous but determined. The entrepreneurship program had transformed him from corporate predator to social innovator. His elder tech company, Second Chances Solutions, had grown from a rehabilitation project to a thriving business serving 10,000 seniors across Maine. 15 months ago, he began voice steady despite trembling hands. I tried to destroy my sister and steal our grandmother's legacy. I believed wealth meant taking from others. Today, I understand it means giving others the chance to thrive. In the audience, Diana wiped tears from her eyes. She now directed the center's financial literacy program, having turned her volunteer work into a full-time calling. The woman who once flaunted designer goods now wore simple clothes and work-worn hands from helping renovate the building. This center, Marcus continued, represents what our grandmother always knew, that real success is measured in lives changed, not dollars accumulated. Every senior who connects with family through our technology, every person who learns financial independence here proves that Eleanor Harper's vision lives on. As he spoke, I noticed Lauren in the audience, his ex-wife. She caught my eye and smiled. They weren't reconciling, but she'd come to support his transformation. Some bridges once burned could at least become memorial markers of growth. Jake squeezed my hand as Marcus introduced Diana. She approached the podium with none of her old artificial confidence replaced by something more genuine, earned authority. I used to think teaching financial literacy to struggling mothers was beneath me, she admitted to the crowd. Now I know it's the most important work I've ever done. When Sarah Martinez, a single mom of 3, texted me last week that she'd saved enough for her kids' college funds using what we taught her, I cried for an hour. She paused, looking directly at me. My grandmother tried to teach us that money was a tool, not a goal. I was too arrogant to listen, but second chances are powerful things. This center will give thousands of people their second chance, just as my sister gave me mine. The crowd applauded as she introduced the center's programs: free elder care technology training, financial literacy for all ages, small business incubators for community entrepreneurs, youth coding camps, everything designed to break cycles of poverty and isolation. Mr. Whitfield stood near the back, pride evident on his weathered face. He'd guided the legal framework making this possible, ensuring the center would operate independently while supported by the Harper Trust. Grandma would have loved the elegance of the structure, self-sustaining service, protecting against future greed. After the ceremony, the 3 of us found ourselves in the center's quiet garden, a space I'd insisted on remembering Grandma's love of growing things. "Did you ever think we'd be here?" Diana asked, absently deadheading roses like Grandma had taught us all those years ago. "Grandma did," I replied. "She planned for it even when it seemed impossible." Marcus pulled out a worn envelope. "I've been carrying this for months, afraid to open it. It's from her lawyer. Apparently, she left letters for us to read after we completed the rehabilitation program." We sat on a bench together, shoulders touching like we hadn't since childhood. Marcus opened his letter with shaking hands. "My dear Marcus," he read aloud, "if you're reading this, you've discovered what I always hoped, that your worth isn't in what you take, but what you give. You were such a generous little boy, always sharing your toys, until fear made you clutch instead of open your hands. I'm proud of you for opening them again. Use your gifts to connect people. Loneliness is the real poverty. Love, Grandma." Diana opened hers, next voice breaking as she read, "Sweet Diana, you shone so brightly as a child, creating beauty everywhere you went. Somewhere along the way, you began believing beauty could be bought instead of made. But now you're creating again. Beautiful futures for women who need hope. That's your true gift. Polish lives, not possessions. Love always, Grandma." They looked at me expectantly, but I shook my head. "I've already read mine. It came with the lighthouse instructions." "What did it say?" Marcus asked. "That love isn't measured in perfection, but in persistence. That she never gave up on you, and neither should I." We sat quietly processing the weight of unconditional love from beyond the grave. Grandma had seen our best selves, even when we couldn't. "The Hartley board meeting is tomorrow," I said eventually. "We're announcing the nationwide expansion of programs like this center, 50 cities in 5 years. Will you two present your components?" Their eyes widened. "You want us in front of the board!" Diana gasped. "You've earned it. Marcus, your elder tech innovations are ready to scale. Diana, your financial literacy curriculum is the best I've seen. It's time to share what you've built." "But we tried to destroy you," Marcus protested. "The board knows that." "They also know transformation when they see it. Robert's been tracking your progress. He says redemption stories inspire more than perfect records." That evening, the three of us had dinner at Jake's and my home, the monthly family gathering that had grown from awkward beginnings to genuine connection. Other program participants joined us each with their own story of choosing change over stagnation. "Remember when we were kids?" Diana asked over dessert. "Grandma would make this same chocolate cake and we'd fight over who got the biggest piece. You usually won." Marcus laughed. "You were vicious with that fork." "Well, Tasha would give hers away if someone looked sad," Diana added, then paused. "Actually, you still do that." "Some things shouldn't change," I said, cutting an extra piece for Tom, a new program participant struggling with the early stages of accountability. As guests departed, my siblings lingered. We stood in the kitchen, the same room where Grandma had taught us all to cook, though only I had paid attention. "Can I ask you something?" Marcus said. "Do you ever regret how things turned out? You could have had billions to spend however you wanted." "I have something better," I replied. "I have purpose. I have impact. I have family who chose to grow rather than stay bitter. What would billions add to that?" "A yacht would be nice," Diana said, then quickly added, "Kidding mostly. Old habits." We laughed. Real laughter, not the sharp-edged kind we'd known for years. It felt like healing. The next day's board meeting went better than I'd hoped. Marcus presented his technology with passion but not arrogance. Diana explained her curriculum with expertise, earned through genuine experience. The board approved national expansion unanimously. Afterward, Richard Blackstone, the CFO who'd initially resisted the transformation, pulled me aside. "Your grandmother would be proud. Hell, I'm proud, and I didn't think that was possible a year ago. What changed your mind?" "Results," he said simply. "We're more profitable than ever while doing more good than ever. It shouldn't work, but it does. Your siblings are part of that proof. If they can transform, anyone can." That night, I stood in Grandma's room at the mansion, the one property I'd kept from the estate. Marcus and Diana had signed it over to the trust, wanting no part of the memories there. But I'd preserved it as a museum of sorts, a reminder of where we'd come from. Her paintings lined the walls, lighthouses standing firm against every storm. On her easel sat her final work unfinished, a lighthouse beam piercing darkness, but instead of ocean, it illuminated a city. Portland, I realized. Her lighthouse had become a beacon for the entire community. Jake found me there. The news is covering the center opening. They're calling it a model for corporate social responsibility. It's more than that, I said. It's proof that people can change, that love can outlast death, that wisdom beats wealth every time. Your siblings proved that today. They proved Grandma right. She said the real inheritance wasn't the money, but the chance to become who we were meant to be. Marcus and Diana just took longer to unwrap their gift. I picked up the rusty key from Grandma's dresser where I'd returned it after opening all the vaults. It had done its work, unlocking not just doors, but hearts, not just wealth, but wisdom, not just secrets, but second chances. Tomorrow would bring new challenges as we expanded Grandma's vision nationwide. There would be setbacks, resistance, moments of doubt. But tonight in the home where 3 grandchildren had once fought over cake and attention, peace settled like coastal fog. The transformation was complete, but the work continued. Marcus had calls scheduled with senior centers in 30 cities. Diana was training facilitators to spread financial literacy. I had a foundation to run that would outlive us all. Different roles, but united purpose. Exactly as Grandma had envisioned. She'd known that shared mission could heal what shared blood had broken. The rusty key had been her catalyst, but love had been her true tool. In the end, we'd all inherited exactly what we needed. My siblings received the humbling that led to growth. I received the responsibility that gave purpose. And Grandma's true fortune, the ability to transform lives through wisdom and compassion, belonged to everyone we touched. The lighthouse beam swept across Portland, no longer warning of rocks but illuminating possibilities. 3 grandchildren who'd once valued all the wrong things now stood as beacons themselves, proof that it's never too late to choose light over darkness. 5 years had passed since that morning in the lawyer's office when a rusty key changed everything. The Harper Family Foundation's annual gathering filled the Portland Convention Center with over 3,000 attendees. Employees, beneficiaries, partners, and volunteers united in continuing Grandma's vision. I stood backstage with Marcus and Diana, the 3 of us reviewing our presentation one final time. We'd done this together for 3 years now, but the nerves remained. Not from public speaking, but from the weight of representing Grandma's legacy. Remember when we used to fight over who got to sit in Grandma's lap during story time? Diana asked, smoothing her simple blue dress, a far cry from the designer gowns she once favored. You usually won, Marcus replied, adjusting his tie. You were smaller and could squeeze in better. While Tasha would sit on the floor by Grandma's feet, just happy to be included, Diana added, smiling at me, still making room for others, even then. Robert Hartley introduced us to thunderous applause. The crowd knew our story. The grandchildren who'd nearly destroyed each other over money only to find redemption through service. We'd become unwitting symbols of the Foundation's core belief. Transformation is always possible. Marcus spoke first, sharing the latest innovations from Second Chances Solutions. This year alone, we've connected 47,000 isolated seniors with their families through our technology, but numbers don't tell the whole story. The screen showed video testimonials, an elderly man in rural Maine seeing his grandchildren for the first time through their virtual reality system, a grandmother with mobility issues attending her granddaughter's wedding remotely, families separated by distance but united by technology designed with love instead of profit margins. My grandmother painted lighthouses. Marcus continued, his voice thick with emotion. I used to think it was a quaint hobby. Now I understand. She was painting connections beacons that guide us home to each other. That's what we're building with every device, every program, every innovation. Diana took the podium next, radiating the quiet confidence that comes from genuine expertise. 5 years ago, I thought financial literacy meant knowing which designer bags held their value. Today I know it means understanding that true value can't be deposited or withdrawn. It's cultivated through wisdom and shared through service. Her presentation showcased the financial literacy program's impact. 800,000 people trained, 60,000 small businesses launched, countless families breaking generational cycles of poverty through education and support. But my favorite success story, Diana said, is Maria Santos. A single mother who attended our first class 5 years ago. She now owns 3 small businesses and teaches our advanced entrepreneurship course. She sent me a photo last week. Her daughter just got a full scholarship to MIT. That's generational change. That's Grandma's vision made real. When my turn came, I spoke about the Foundation's broader mission, the medical innovations making healthcare accessible, the housing initiatives creating sustainable communities, the education programs opening doors previously locked by circumstance. Eleanor Harper understood something fundamental. I said, looking out at the sea of faces. Wealth isn't about accumulation, it's about circulation. Like blood in the body, money only creates health when it flows freely, nourishing every part. Hoarding creates disease, sharing creates vitality. I paused, seeing familiar faces in the crowd. Mrs. Chen from the Literacy Center, still volunteering at 93. Thomas from the Lighthouse, who'd become our groundskeeping coordinator for all facilities. Janet from the shelter, now running our workforce development program. My grandmother left my siblings and me very different inheritances, I continued. They received money that seemed like everything but proved to be incomplete. I received responsibility that seemed overwhelming, but proved to be transformative. In the end, we all received exactly what we needed to become who we were meant to be. The presentation concluded with a surprise announcement. Marcus and Diana had been working secretly on a joint project, the Eleanor Harper Memorial Center for Intergenerational Connection. Combining their expertise in elder technology and financial literacy, they designed a comprehensive program helping families bridge both digital and economic divides. Grandma always said the real poverty was isolation, Diana explained as architectural plans filled the screen. This center will ensure no one faces their challenges alone. The crowd erupted in applause. In the front row, Lauren, Marcus's ex-wife, wiped tears from her eyes. They'd found their way to friendship after recognizing their marriage had been built on the wrong foundations. She now ran our family counseling program, helping others navigate the intersection of money and relationships. Bradley, Diana's ex-husband, was notably absent. He'd remarried twice more each time to wealthy women who eventually saw through his facade. Last I'd heard, he was selling timeshares in Florida, still chasing the easy money that had cost him everything meaningful. After the presentation, the 3 of us found ourselves in a quiet corner, processing the magnitude of what we'd built together. "Did you see Mrs. Patterson in the 3rd row?" Marcus asked. She was crying during the Elder Connection segment. "Her son just moved to Seattle," Diana explained. "She's been using your VR system to have dinner with him every Sunday. She told me it saved her from depression." "That's why we do this," I said. "Not for the applause or recognition, but for Mrs. Patterson and millions like her." A young woman approached hesitantly. "Excuse me, I'm Sarah Martinez. Diana, you mentioned my mother Maria in your speech." Diana lit up. "Sarah, congratulations on MIT." "I wanted to thank you," Sarah said, voice shaking. "All of you. 5 years ago, we were living in our car. Your programs didn't just change our circumstances, they changed our possibilities. I'm studying biomedical engineering. I want to create affordable medical devices, continue what you've started." After she left, we stood in comfortable silence, the weight of impact settling over us like a familiar blanket. "Grandma knew, didn't she?" Marcus said finally. "She knew we'd end up here. She hoped I corrected. She planned for the best while preparing for the worst. We could have chosen differently." "But we didn't," Diana added. "Well, not eventually." That evening, we held our private family dinner at the mansion. The monthly gatherings had evolved into something sacred, a time to drop public personas and just be siblings. Jake cooked while Marcus's children played in the same rooms where we'd once fought over toys. Diana's new partner, David, a fellow nonprofit worker she'd met at a conference, helped set the table with the good china Grandma had preserved. Aunt Tasha. Marcus's daughter, Emma, asked, "Why is there a rusty key in the dining room cabinet?" I retrieved the key, holding it up to catch the light. This key opened the door to everything we have now, but more importantly, it opened our hearts to what really matters. "Can I hold it?" she asked with 7-year-old reverence. "Of course, but be gentle, it's very special." She examined it carefully. "It doesn't look special. It looks old and kind of ugly." "That's the most important lesson," Diana told her niece. "The most valuable things often look ordinary. You have to learn to see with more than just your eyes." Marcus added, "Your great-grandmother taught us that true treasure isn't shiny or new. It's usually hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone wise enough to recognize it." Emma nodded solemnly, handing the key back. "Like how you all used to be mean to each other, but now you're nice." The adults exchanged glances and laughed. "Exactly like that," I confirmed. Later, after the children were asleep and the dishes were done, the 6 adults sat on the porch watching fireflies dance in Grandma's garden. The lighthouse paintings visible through the windows seemed to glow in the soft evening light. "I've been thinking," Marcus said, "about that last video of Grandma's where she talked about breaking cycles. We did it, didn't we? We broke the pattern her siblings started." "We came close to repeating it," Diana reminded him. "If Tasha had been anyone else, if Grandma hadn't planned so carefully—" But that's the point," Jake interjected. "Cycles break when someone chooses differently. Eleanor chose building over bitterness. Tasha chose patience over revenge. You two chose growth over grudges. Each choice mattered." David, still learning our complex history, asked, "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if the money had been split equally from the start?" "We'd have destroyed each other," Marcus said without hesitation. "Diana and I would have blown through it and demanded more. Tasha would have given hers away and been left with nothing. Grandma knew us better than we knew ourselves." "She gave us what we could handle," Diana agreed. "And when we proved we could handle more, not money but responsibility, more was given." "The parable of the talents," I murmured. Except in our case, the talents were lessons disguised as losses. As the evening wound down, we performed our new tradition. Each of us shared one way we'd honored Grandma that month. Marcus had started a program teaching business ethics to MBA students, using his own fall as a cautionary tale. Diana was mentoring formerly wealthy individuals who'd lost everything to poor choices, helping them rebuild with wisdom instead of greed. I'd overseen the opening of 3 new community centers, each one a lighthouse for its neighborhood. "She'd be proud," Diana said softly. "She is proud," Marcus corrected. "Somehow I know she sees this." Walking through the mansion one last time before locking up, I paused in Grandma's craft room. Her easel still held that final unfinished painting, the lighthouse illuminating the city. But now I saw what I'd missed before. In the light beam, barely visible, were 3 small figures walking together toward the lighthouse. She'd known. Even then, even through the pain of our warfare, she'd seen this moment. 3 grandchildren united in purpose, guided by the light she'd spent a lifetime tending. The rusty key sat in my pocket, a comfortable weight after all these years. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Expansion meetings, funding decisions, the constant work of turning wealth into well-being. But tonight was for gratitude. 5 years ago, a rusty key had unlocked a fortune. But the real treasure was this: family-healed purpose found and love multiplied through service. Grandma's true legacy lived not in the billions we managed, but in the millions of lives touched by her vision. As Jake and I drove home, Portland's lights twinkled below us. Somewhere in those lights were families reconnected through Marcus's technology, individuals empowered by Diana's financial teaching, communities thriving through programs we'd all built together. "No regrets?" Jake asked, taking my hand. "None," I answered honestly. Grandma knew what she was doing. She always did. The lighthouse beam swept across the harbor, eternal and reassuring. 3 grandchildren who'd once fought over scraps now stood together, tending the light she'd lit. The healing was complete, but the work continued. And in that work, in that purpose, in that unity. Eleanor Harper's greatest painting was finally finished, not with brushstrokes on canvas, but with lives transformed and hearts aligned. The rusty key had unlocked exactly what she'd intended, not a vault of money, but a future of meaning. 10 years had passed since I first held the rusty key in that lawyer's office, a decade of transformation that had rippled far beyond our family to touch millions of lives. Today, the Harper Foundation's Impact Summit had drawn representatives from 50 countries, all gathered to celebrate and share what we'd built on Grandma's blueprint. The Portland Convention Center buzzed with energy as I made my final preparations for the keynote address. Marcus stood beside me, graying at the temples, but radiating the quiet confidence of someone who'd found their purpose. Diana adjusted my microphone, her movements efficient and caring, the sister I'd always hoped she could become. "Ready for this?" Marcus asked. "As ready as one can be to summarize a decade of miracles," I replied. "They're not miracles," Diana corrected gently. "They're the natural result of wisdom properly applied. Grandma would want us to be precise about that." She was right, of course. Everything we'd achieved had been through careful planning, hard work, and the multiplication effect of empowering others. But sometimes it felt miraculous. The boy who'd tried to have me declared mentally incompetent now ran a technology empire dedicated to human connection. The woman who'd mocked Grandma's recipes now directed financial empowerment programs reaching 20 million people annually. And I, the social worker who'd inherited a rusty key, now stewarded resources that had transformed entire communities. Robert Hartley introduced us to an audience that included Nobel laureates, heads of state, and most importantly, the grassroots leaders who implemented our programs daily. The theme of this year's summit was Inheritance of Impact: How One Woman's Vision Changed the World. I began with the story everyone knew, but never tired of hearing. 3 grandchildren around a conference table, 2 celebrating millions, while 1 clutched a rusty key. The audience laughed at the right moments, grew quiet during the revelations, and nodded knowingly as I described our transformation. Eleanor Harper understood something revolutionary. I said the presentation showing photos of Grandma through the decades. She knew that wealth without wisdom becomes a weapon, but wisdom without wealth remains philosophy. She spent 60 years building the bridge between them. The statistics appeared on screen. 8.7 million seniors connected through Marcus's technologies. 23 million people financially literate through Diana's programs. 847 community centers operating worldwide. 3.2 million jobs created through our small business initiatives. 14 breakthrough medical technologies making healthcare accessible, 0 Harper family members enriching themselves beyond modest salaries. But Grandma would be the first to say these aren't just numbers, I continued. Each one represents a choice, our choice to serve rather than hoard, and their choice to grow rather than stagnate. Marcus took the podium next, no longer the sharp-edged corporate predator, but a thoughtful innovator. My grandmother painted lighthouses because they stand through storms while guiding others to safety. Our technology follows that model, robust enough to serve the most vulnerable, simple enough for anyone to use, affordable enough to reach everyone who needs it. He shared the story of Margaret Chen, a 94-year-old in rural Montana, who'd connected with her great-grandchildren in Singapore through our holographic communication system. She told me, "Your machine gave me back my family." That's when I understood. We're not in the technology business. We're in the connection business. Diana followed, wearing the same style of paint-stained cardigan Grandma had favored. Financial literacy isn't about creating wealthy individuals. It's about creating empowered communities. When one person learns to manage money wisely, they teach their children. When one family breaks the poverty cycle, they inspire their neighbors. When one community thrives, they model possibility for the world. Her presentation showcased Maria Santos again, but now as a case study taught in business schools worldwide. From homeless to Harvard Business School guest lecturer, her journey embodied what happened when wisdom met opportunity. My grandmother tried to teach me this when I was young and foolish, Diana admitted. She said money was like paint, meaningless until you used it to create something beautiful. I wasted years collecting paint. Now I help others create masterpieces. The summit's highlight came when we announced the Eleanor Harper Institute for Transformative Wealth, a teaching hospital for social innovation, where future leaders would learn to bridge profit and purpose. Located on the site of Grandma's first lighthouse painting, it would stand as a permanent beacon of her philosophy. We're not training charity workers or business leaders, I explained. We're developing a new species of human, one that sees no conflict between doing well and doing good, between personal success and collective thriving. The audience erupted in sustained applause. In the front row, I saw faces that marked our journey. Lauren, who'd evolved from Marcus's bitter ex-wife to our head of family services. Thomas, the lighthouse keeper who'd protected Grandma's secrets and now protected her legacy as our chief of operations. Even Richard Blackstone, the CFO, who'd initially resisted our transformation, now championed impact metrics over profit margins. But the most meaningful presence was the group of teenagers in the third row, all beneficiaries of our programs who'd earned scholarships to attend. Among them sat Emma Marcus's daughter, now 17, and already developing affordable water purification systems for refugee camps. During the lunch break, the three of us siblings found ourselves in the same quiet corner where we'd hidden during countless corporate events. Old habits, but with new purpose. "Did you see the proposal from the UN?" Diana asked. "They want to replicate our model in 40 developing nations. And the MacArthur Foundation wants to study how we reversed generational wealth concentration," Marcus added. "They're calling it the Harper effect." "Grandma would laugh at that," I said. "She'd say we didn't reverse anything. We just remembered what wealth was for in the first place." A young man approached hesitantly. "Excuse me, I'm James Patterson. My grandmother was your grandmother's neighbor." We remembered Mrs. Patterson, the elderly woman who defended me at the community board meeting when Marcus tried to have me declared unstable. "She passed last year," James continued, "but she left you this." He handed me an envelope yellowed with age. Inside was a letter dated 40 years ago, written in Grandma's distinctive hand. "Dear Patricia, thank you for agreeing to hold this until the right moment. If you're reading this, it means my grandchildren have found their way to each other and to their purpose. I'm writing this as I watch them play in the garden. Marcus building elaborate sandcastles, Diana decorating them with flowers, Tasha making sure everyone has equal space to create. They don't know it yet, but they're practicing for their future. Marcus will build, Diana will beautify, and Tasha will ensure fairness. They'll lose their way as we all do, but the seeds of who they're meant to be are already planted. The key I'll leave Tasha isn't just to vaults or wealth, it's to their better angels. She'll unlock what's always been there waiting. And when she does, please give them this reminder that I saw their light even in their darkness. Build well, beauty freely, share fairly. All my love, Eleanor." Diana was crying. Marcus stared at the letter like it might disappear. I held it between us, this tangible proof of faith that had outlasted doubt love, that had conquered greed. "She knew," Marcus whispered. "Even then, even when we were children, she knew what we'd become." "She believed," I corrected, "and her belief became our reality." That afternoon, the summit continued with workshops, presentations, and collaborative sessions. But the three of us slipped away to visit Grandma's grave. We'd avoided it together for years, the weight of our past, making collective mourning impossible. Now we stood before her headstone, simple granite with a lighthouse etched at the top. Eleanor Harper, she lit the way. Marcus placed flowers, wild roses from her garden. Diana left a photo of the thousands who'd graduated from financial literacy programs. I set down the rusty key, returning it to her at last. "We did it, Grandma," Diana said softly. "We became who you always saw us to be. It just took us a while to see it ourselves." Marcus added. We stood in silence, 3 middle-aged grandchildren who'd traveled from war to peace, from greed to generosity, from isolation to unity. The journey had cost us. Marcus's marriage, Diana's illusions, my innocence about family bonds, but it had given us so much more. You know what I realized? I said eventually. The rusty key was never about the vaults. It was about unlocking our ability to see beyond ourselves. The rust was intentional, Marcus agreed, making it look worthless so only someone who valued the worthless would keep it. Classic grandma. Diana smiled through tears, teaching through misdirection. As we walked back to the convention center, arms linked like we hadn't since childhood, I thought about the next decade. The Harper Institute would train thousands of leaders. Our programs would reach hundreds of millions. The ripple effects would continue long after we were gone. But more immediately tonight, we'd have our family dinner. Emma would present her water purification project. Marcus's son would play piano, poorly but enthusiastically. Diana's stepchildren would argue about video games. Jake would cook too much food. And somewhere in the chaos of ordinary family life, Grandma's true legacy would live on. The summit's final session focused on succession planning. How do you pass on not just resources but values? How do you ensure the next generation understands that wealth is responsibility, not privilege? You start with a rusty key, I told the audience. You make the treasure hard to find so they value the search. You test character before revealing resources. You create structures that reward service over selfishness. Most importantly, you love them enough to let them fail, then love them more as they choose to rise. Marcus added, you recognize that the real inheritance isn't what you leave them, but who they become in pursuing it. Diana concluded, and you trust that love properly structured outlasts everything, even death, even betrayal, even the worst of human nature. As the summit ended and delegates dispersed to carry Grandma's philosophy to their corners of the world, the 3 of us stood where it all began. The Hartley Industries building gleamed in the setting sun, but our eyes were drawn to the harbor where lighthouse beams were beginning their nightly vigil. She painted them obsessively, I mused. Now I understand why. Each brushstroke was an act of faith that light would outlast darkness. We're her paintings now, Diana said, her masterwork. Still unfinished, Marcus reminded us, still being painted. The rusty key might rest on Grandma's grave, but its work lived on in every choice we made, every life we touched, every moment we chose wisdom over wealth. Eleanor Harper had hidden billions in lighthouse vaults, but her true treasure was the transformation of 3 hearts from stone to flesh, from taking to giving, from darkness to light. As Portland's lights began twinkling below, I made a silent promise. We'd tend her lighthouse flame for whatever years remained to us, and when our time came, others would take up the watch, because that's what family does, not the family bound by blood alone, but the family forged by purpose. The legacy lived on rust and all beautiful in its deliberate imperfection, priceless in its careful craft. 3 grandchildren who'd once fought over millions now stewarded billions for humanity. The key had unlocked exactly what Grandma intended, not vaults of treasure, but treasures of the heart. And somewhere in the evening sky, I could almost see her paintbrush in hand, adding the final touches to her greatest work, a family redeemed, a fortune transformed, and a light that would shine for generations to come. Thank you for reading this story of transformation, family, and the true meaning of inheritance. If you've ever struggled with family relationships, discovered that real wealth isn't measured in dollars, or believed in second chances, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you witnessed how wisdom can transform wealth into something greater? How do you think we can break negative family patterns and build positive legacies? Please like this story. If it touched your heart, subscribe to my channel for more tales about families finding their way back to each other. And share this video with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late for redemption. Your support helps these stories reach others who might need hope today. Remember, the rustiest keys often open the most valuable doors. Sometimes what looks worthless holds the greatest treasures. We just need eyes to see and hearts to understand. Until next time, may you find your own lighthouses guiding you home.